The new series arrived and name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Wednesday. So let's start the series. The first thing Naruto noticed was the silence. Not peaceful. Not empty. Wrong. Like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to crack. He'd been falling for what felt like hours. Or maybe seconds. Time didn't make sense when reality ripped apart at the seams. One moment he'd been there, hand outstretched, chakra burning through his tenketsu, trying to pull Sasuke back from the edge of that unstable rift. The next moment, the rift had pulsed, and Naruto had felt something inside him tear. Not his body. Something deeper. The space between his ribs where the nine tails usually rested had gone quiet. Not the calm of cooperation. The silence of absence. He hit ground hard. Shoulder first. Rolled. His training took over before his mind caught up, tucking limbs, distributing impact, coming to rest against something rough and cold. Stone. Carved stone, maybe? His fingers pressed against it, searching for familiar texture, familiar chakra. Nothing. Not less chakra. No chakra. Not in the stone. Not in the air. Not in the trees he couldn't see but could hear. Wait, no. He couldn't hear them either. No leaves rustling. No birds. No distant sound of water moving over rocks. Just silence. And beneath it, something that felt like pressure. Like standing at the bottom of a lake and feeling the weight of all that water above you, pressing down, waiting for you to breathe so it could rush in. Naruto opened his eyes. Dark. Not night dark. Covered dark. Branches above him, thick and tangled, blocking out whatever light source existed. Moon? Stars? He couldn't tell. The air smelled different too. Cleaner than Konoha. Sharper. Like the forest near the land of iron, where the air was so cold and thin it burned going down. He pushed himself up slowly. His ribs ached. His left arm screamed where he'd landed on it. But nothing was broken. He'd had worse. Much worse. The kind of worse that left scars on the inside of his chest where no one could see them. The clearing he'd landed in was small. Maybe 10 meters across. Surrounded by trees that looked wrong, too tall, too straight, their bark too smooth. Like someone had drawn trees from memory but gotten the details slightly off. In the center stood the stone he'd hit. A statue. Weathered and cracked, moss creeping up its base. Humanoid but not quite human. The face was too long, the fingers too many, the posture too still in a way that suggested movement frozen rather than rest. Naruto stared at it for a long moment. Then he closed his eyes and reached for Kurama. Nothing. Not the fox's irritation. Not its mocking laugh. Not even the simmering rage that had lived in his chest for as long as he could remember. Just silence. Empty, hollow silence. His hand went to his stomach. Pressed there. Felt his own heartbeat, steady and real. That was something. He was still here. Still alive. Still him, even if the thing that had been part of him for his entire life was suddenly gone. He should panic. He knew he should panic. Instead, Naruto took a breath. Held it. Let it out slowly. The way Jiraiya had taught him, back when the world was simpler, and the only thing he had to worry about was dying. Panic kills faster than any enemy, the old pervert had said. Breathe. Assess. Move. Right. Assess. He was in a forest that felt wrong. His chakra reserves were not empty, but reduced. Like trying to draw water from a well that had gone dry at the bottom. He could feel the energy moving through him, but it was sluggish. Heavy. As if the air itself was thicker here, harder to pull through his coils. No Kurama. No backup. No way home that he could see. And something was watching him. The thought came without evidence. No sound. No movement. Just the same instinct that had kept him alive through a dozen wars and 100 missions. The hair on his arms was standing up. His shoulders had gone tight without his permission. Naruto opened his eyes. Nothing moved in the tree-line. But the silence had changed. Become expectant. Like the forest was waiting to see what he would do. He stood. Slowly. Deliberately. Making sure his balance was solid, his weight distributed. Ready to move in any direction. All right, he said quietly. The sound of his own voice was jarring in the stillness. I know you're there. No response. He waited. The way he'd learned to wait during the war, patient, present, letting the tension build until whoever was watching made the first move. Waiting for the crack in their patience. It came from behind him. A rustle. Quick. almost too quick to catch. And then a voice, high and reedy, like wind through a cracked window. New. You're new. Haven't smelled new in how long? How long has it been? Naruto didn't turn. He'd learned that lesson too. Never show your back to something that speaks in riddles. I'm lost, he said. Can you tell me where I am? A laugh. Wet. Wrong. Lost. He says lost. As if anyone finds this place by accident. As if anyone finds it at all. Then how did I get here? Through. You came through. The voice moved. Circling. Naruto tracked it by sound alone, letting his body pivot in place. The between. The space where things aren't. Something brought you. Something wants you here. Something wanted him here. That was worse than random chance. Random chance he could work with. Random chance meant no one was looking for him, no one had plans for him, no one expected anything. But being wanted? That meant strings. And Naruto had spent his entire life cutting strings other people tried to attach to him. What wants me here? The voice stopped circling. Naruto could feel it now, somewhere to his left. Close. Too close. Not what? Who? And you'll meet her soon enough. They all do. The ones who come through. The ones who don't belong. Why me? A pause. Then, quieter. Because you don't belong anywhere. And she always collects the broken things. The voice faded. Or maybe the thing just stopped speaking. Naruto couldn't tell the difference. He stood there for a long moment, breathing, waiting, letting the silence settle back into place. Then he moved. He needed to find higher ground. Needed to see what kind of forest he was in, what kind of world, what kind of place had air without chakra and voices that laughed like broken glass. The trees were wrong. He noticed that more as he climbed, using what chakra he could muster to enhance his jumps, to stick to bark that felt slick and unnatural under his fingers. They were too tall. Too straight. And they grew too close together, their branches tangling above him like clasped hands, blocking out everything but the faintest slivers of light. He broke through the canopy after a few minutes of climbing. And stopped. Below him, spread out in a valley carved between two mountains, was a town. Not a village. Not a city. Something in between. Lights flickered in windows. Roads wound between buildings that looked old, hundreds of years old, maybe more. And in the center, rising above everything else, was an academy. Naruto knew it was an academy the way he'd known the voice was wrong. Instinct. The building had that look, towers and spires, arched windows, the kind of architecture that said we teach things here without actually saying anything at all. But it was the forest around the town that made him pause. Because it wasn't a forest. Not really. It was a barrier. Trees planted too close together, too straight, too ordered, a wall of wood and shadow that encircled the valley like a fence. And beyond it, on all sides, nothing. Just darkness. The kind of darkness that wasn't absence of light but absence of everything. Naruto had seen darkness like that before. In the space between dimensions. In the void that existed outside the world, where even the sage's power couldn't reach. He was outside his world. The thought settled in his chest, cold and heavy. Not fear, he knew fear. This was something else. Something that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing the ground you'd been standing on your whole life was just gone. He looked at the academy again. At the lights in its windows. At the figures moving in its courtyards, too small to see clearly but definitely there. People. Living, breathing people, even if they were people in a world without chakra. People meant information. Information meant a way home. Or at least a way to survive until he found one. Naruto climbed down from the tree. His hands were steady. His breathing was even. His face, he knew, was probably smiling. It always smiled when things got bad. The smile was armor. The smile was a lie. The smile was the only thing that had kept him going through years of people looking through him like he was made of glass. He hit the forest floor and started walking toward the town. Behind him, something moved in the darkness between the trees. It didn't follow. But it didn't leave either. The gates of the town were open. That was Naruto's first warning. No guards. No walls. No one checking who came and went. Just an archway of carved stone, worn smooth by years of weather, with words etched into the top in a language he didn't recognize. He walked through anyway. Because what choice did he have? Stand outside all night? Wait for whatever had spoken to him to decide it was hungry? The streets were empty. Or mostly empty. He passed a few figures, hunched and hooded, moving quickly between buildings. None of them looked at him. None of them slowed. They moved like people who had learned not to see what walked beside them. The academy loomed ahead. Closer now, Naruto could see details he'd missed from the treeline. Cracks in the stonework. Windows that had been boarded over. A fountain in the courtyard that no longer ran with water, its basin filled with leaves and something that might have been blood if the light was worse and his eyes were less sharp. He stopped at the gate. Another archway. More words he couldn't read. And beyond it, a courtyard where a group of students stood in a loose circle, their voices carrying in the night air. Heard it took another one last night. Third one this month. That's not true. Only two. Weems said the other one just transferred. Weems says a lot of things. Weems said this place was safe. A laugh. Bitter. Safe. Right. Nothing safe here. Not since the... One of them looked up. Saw Naruto standing at the gate. Went quiet. The others followed their gaze. Naruto felt the weight of their attention settle on him. Different from the forest. Different from the voice. This was human attention, curious, wary, assessing. He raised a hand. Offered the smile that had gotten him through 1,000 awkward conversations. Hey. I'm a little lost. Can you tell me where I am? None of them answered. They just stared. And Naruto realized, slowly, that they weren't staring at his face or his clothes or the obvious fact that he didn't belong here. They were staring at his eyes. His eyes. Right. The whisker marks. The blue that wasn't quite natural. The thing about his face that had always marked him as different, as other, as the container for something that should never have been contained. One of the students, a girl with hair that changed color in the light, shifting between pink and something that might have been purple, took a step back. You're not from here, she said. Not a question. Naruto let his hand drop. No. I'm not. Then how did you get past the woods? The woods? The woods. Her voice had gone tight. The ones that kill everyone who isn't supposed to be here. The ones that decide who gets through and who doesn't. Naruto thought about the voice. The wet laugh. The way it had circled him, close enough to touch, close enough to. I walked, he said. The girl's face went pale. Behind her, one of the others, a boy with scales on his neck and something wrong with his eyes, started backing away. You walked through the Blackwood, the girl said. And you're standing here. Talking. Smiling. Is that bad? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked at him like he just said something that made the world shift slightly on its axis. Then, from behind them, a new voice cut through the tension. Enid. The girl, Enid, jumped. Turned. The others scattered, suddenly finding places to be, things to look at, anything except the figure walking toward them from the academy's main entrance. Naruto looked too. And for the second time that night, he felt something shift in his chest. She was small. Smaller than him by a good margin. Dark hair braided tight against her head. A dress that looked like something from a funeral, black, severe, buttoned to the throat. Her face was pale. Her eyes were dark. And her expression was the blankiest thing Naruto had ever seen, and he'd spent years watching Sasuke perfect the art of feeling nothing. She stopped a few feet away. Looked at Enid first, then at the others, then finally at Naruto. Her eyes lingered on his face. On the marks on his cheeks. On the way his shoulders were set, ready to move, ready to fight, ready to do whatever it took to survive whatever came next. You're not from here, she said. Naruto shrugged. It was the same thing Enid had said, but it felt different coming from her. Sharper. Like a blade being tested against a whetstone. Neither are you. She tilted her head. Just slightly. The way an animal might tilt its head when it heard a sound it couldn't identify. Incorrect. He smiled. Not the big, loud smile he used on missions or the warm, open smile he used on friends. Something smaller. Something that didn't quite reach his eyes. You just don't belong either. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in her face. Not surprise. Not anger. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Then it was gone. I'm Wednesday, she said. And you're standing in the middle of Nevermore Academy after dark, wearing clothes that don't exist in this century, with no explanation for how you survived the woods that have killed everyone who tried to enter uninvited for the past 300 years. She paused. You have exactly 30 seconds to make me believe you're worth keeping alive. Naruto looked at her. Really looked. At the stillness of her hands. The precision of her posture. The way her eyes moved, tracking everything, missing nothing. He'd seen people like her before. In the ANBU. In the shadows of the Hokage's office. People who had learned to survive by being sharper than everyone else, by cutting away everything that wasn't useful, by turning themselves into weapons that happened to look like people. "You're not going to kill me," he said. "You don't know that." "You're not." He tilted his head, mimicking her earlier gesture. "Because you want to know how I got through the woods? And you can't ask questions if I'm dead." The silence stretched. Enid made a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. The others had gone completely still. Wednesday's lips curved. Not a smile. Something smaller. Sharper. A crack in the mask that let him see, just for a second, the person underneath. 20 seconds, she said. Naruto let his smile widen. Let it become something real for the first time since he'd landed in this world. A jutsu went wrong. I fell through a crack in reality. Now I'm here. I don't know how to get home, and something in those woods told me someone wanted me here. He paused. Also, I can't feel the demon inside me anymore, which is either very good or very bad, and I haven't decided which yet. Wednesday stared at him. Enid stared at him. The boy with scales on his neck made a sound like a choke scream. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the gate, the thing that had spoken to him in the woods began to laugh. Naruto ended up in a room. He wasn't sure how. The conversation with Wednesday had been interrupted by a woman in severe clothing who introduced herself as Principal Weems and proceeded to ask approximately 400 questions in the time it took to walk from the courtyard to the main building. He answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't, smiled when smiling seemed appropriate, and stayed quiet when it didn't. Weems looked at him the way people had always looked at him, like he was a problem to be solved, a puzzle to be figured out, something that didn't quite fit and needed to be squeezed into place. "The woods should have killed you," she said at one point. They were standing in a hallway lined with portraits that seemed to watch him as he passed. "No one walks through the Blackwood. Not alone. Not at night. Guess I got lucky." She stopped walking, turned to face him. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, the kind of eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything but still hoped to be. "There's no such thing as luck in this place," she said. "Not the good kind." Then she'd left him here. This room. Small, barely furnished, with a window that looked out over the courtyard and a bed that smelled like dust and disuse. Naruto sat on the edge of the bed, stared at his hands. He was alone. He'd been alone before. For years, before Irika-sensei, before Team 7, before he built something that looked like a family out of the broken pieces of other people's lives. He'd been alone so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone else's warmth in the room. But that was different. That loneliness had been surrounded by people. He'd been alone in crowds, alone in the market, alone in his apartment, while the village moved and breathed and lived around him. This was different. This was being the only person in the world who remembered that chakra existed. The only person who had ever seen a jutsu. The only person who had ever carried a demon in his chest and called it something like friend. His hand pressed against his stomach again. Empty. Still empty. Kurama. He didn't say it out loud. What would be the point? The fox couldn't hear him. Couldn't feel him. Couldn't do that thing it did sometimes, when the silence in his head got too heavy and the Ninetales would send a pulse of irritation through their connection, just to remind him he wasn't alone. Naruto closed his eyes. He wouldn't cry. He'd learned not to cry a long time ago. Tears didn't fix anything. Tears just made your face wet and your eyes puffy and gave people something to look at when they wanted to see you break. Instead, he breathed. Slow. Steady. The way Jiraiya had taught him. Breathe. Assess. Move. He was in another world. His chakra was reduced. Kurama was gone. He had no allies, no resources, no way home. But he was alive. He was whole. He had his training, his instincts, the things he'd learned from people who had believed in him when no one else did. That was enough. It had to be enough. A knock came at the door. Naruto opened his eyes. Waited. The knock came again, 3 sharp raps, precise and deliberate. He stood. Crossed the room. Opened the door. Wednesday stood in the hallway. Alone. Her face as blank as it had been in the courtyard. But her hands were different now, not still, not precise. One of them was wrapped around something small and dark. The other was clenched at her side. "You're not going to sleep," she said. It wasn't a question. I've had worse nights. That's not an answer. Naruto leaned against the doorframe. Let his body relax into something that looked casual, even though every muscle was still ready to move. Why are you here, Wednesday? She held out the thing in her hand. A journal. Old leather, cracked binding, pages that looked like they'd been written and rewritten and rewritten again. I've been researching the Blackwood for 3 years, she said. The disappearances. The deaths. The things that live in the dark between the trees. She paused. No one has ever walked through it alone. No one has ever come out the other side. Until you. Naruto looked at the journal. Looked at her face. Looked at the way her fingers were white-knuckled around the leather, the way her jaw was set, the way she was holding herself like she expected him to laugh. You want to know how I did it? I want to know what you are. He met her eyes. Dark. Unreadable. But beneath the blankness, he saw it, the same thing he'd seen in the courtyard. Recognition. Not of him, not of his face, but of something underneath. Something that knew what it was like to be different in a world that didn't understand different. I'm a ninja, he said. From a village called Konoha. In a world that doesn't exist anymore, at least not here. He paused. And I'm not sure I can get back. Wednesday stared at him. For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe in a way that Naruto could see. Then she stepped forward, pressed the journal into his hands. Her fingers brushed against his, cold, dry, precise, and then she was stepping back, putting distance between them, retreating behind the mask of blankness that she wore like armor. If you're going to stay, she said, you should know what you're staying in. The woods are getting worse. Things are dying that shouldn't die. And something is hunting the students. She turned. Started walking down the hallway. Naruto watched her go. Felt the weight of the journal in his hands. Felt the echo of her cold fingers against his skin. Wednesday. She stopped. Didn't turn. Why do you care? About the disappearances? About the students? Silence. Long enough that Naruto thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, because no one else does. And someone has to. She walked away. Her footsteps were quiet on the stone floor. Precise. Deliberate. The footsteps of someone who had learned to move through the world without being seen. Naruto closed the door. Sat back on the bed. Opened the journal to the first page. The handwriting was small. Neat. The kind of handwriting that came from someone who believed in precision, in order, in making every mark mean something. Day 1. I arrived at Nevermore today. My parents believe this will cure me. They are wrong. Day 3. The students here are not like the ones at my other schools. They are different. Broken. Dangerous. I think I might like it. Day 7. Something is wrong with the woods. The animals are leaving. The birds stopped singing 3 days ago. No one else has noticed. Day 12. A student disappeared last night. Bianca's roommate. She went into the woods to meet someone and didn't come back. The school says she transferred. The school is lying. Naruto turned the pages. Read about disappearances and strange sounds and the feeling of being watched that Wednesday had documented in painstaking detail. Read about her attempts to enter the woods, always blocked by something, a wall of thorns, a sudden fog, a feeling of wrongness that turned her back before she could take more than a few steps. Read the most recent entry, dated 3 days ago. Something has changed. The woods are hungry now. Not passive. Not waiting. Hunting. 2 more students gone in a week. Weems has locked the gates. No one leaves after dark. But the gates won't stop what's already inside. I need to know what he is. The boy from the woods. The one who smiled like he'd already lost everything. If he walked through the Blackwood and survived, maybe he can help me find what's been taking them. Or maybe he's the one who's been taking them all along. I'll find out. Naruto closed the journal. Set it on the bed beside him. Stared at the window, at the darkness beyond the glass, at the faint shapes of trees moving in a wind he couldn't hear. She'd been watching him. Judging him. Deciding whether he was the threat or the answer. And she'd given him her journal anyway. Her research. Her evidence. Everything she'd collected in 3 years of watching the woods and waiting for answers. That wasn't trust. That was a test. Naruto smiled. Small. Real. The kind of smile he hadn't worn since the last time he'd seen Sasuke's back disappearing into the distance. She was sharp. Cold. Closed off in a way that reminded him of people he'd known, people he'd fought beside, people he'd lost. She was also scared. Not of him. Not of the woods. Not of the thing that was hunting in the dark. She was scared of being the only one who saw what was happening. Of being the only one who cared enough to do something about it. Of being alone with the truth while everyone else pretended everything was fine. Naruto knew that fear. He'd lived with it his whole life. He lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling, let his breathing slow, let his body relax, let himself exist in the silence of a world that had no chakra, no demons, no wars waiting to be fought. Tomorrow, he'd figure things out. Tomorrow, he'd find a way home. Tomorrow, he'd decide what to do about Wednesday and her journal and the thing in the woods that wanted something from him. Tonight, he let himself be tired. Tonight, he let himself be alone. And somewhere, in the space between sleeping and waking, he thought he felt something stir in his chest. Not karama. Not chakra. Something smaller. Quieter. Something that felt almost like hope. Chapter 2: The Weight of Silence. The first thing Naruto noticed about Nevermore was the staring. Not hostile. Not quite curious. Something in between. The way people looked at a wound that was still healing, trying to decide if it was safe to touch. He walked through the main courtyard at what the academy called breakfast time, and felt eyes on him from every direction. Students with scales. Students with feathers. Students whose skin shifted color in the morning light, or whose eyes reflected too brightly, or whose shadows moved wrong when they walked. They looked at his clothes, still the same ones he'd arrived in, orange and black, torn at the shoulder where he'd landed. They looked at his face, the marks on his cheeks, the blue of his eyes, the way he moved through the crowd like someone who'd learned to walk through battlefields. They looked at him the way the villagers had looked at him when he was a child. Like he was something that didn't belong. Naruto smiled, nodded, kept walking. He'd learned, a long time ago, that there were two ways to deal with stares. You could shrink. Make yourself smaller. Try to disappear into the spaces between people's gazes. Or you could be so much yourself that the stares became irrelevant. He chose the second. He always chose the second. The dining hall was massive. Stone walls. High ceilings. Tables arranged in rows like something out of a castle, or one of those old movies Kakashi had made him watch during a mission once, when they were stuck in a safe house with nothing else to do. Naruto grabbed food from a counter, things he didn't recognize mostly, bread that was darker than he was used to and meat that smelled strange and fruit that was the wrong color, and looked for somewhere to sit. He found an empty table in the corner. Sat with his back to the wall, facing the room. Old habit. The kind of habit that came from growing up in a village where half the people would have been happy to see you dead. He was halfway through his first bite when Enid appeared. She slid onto the bench across from him with the kind of energy that seemed to fill the space around her, bright and warm and slightly overwhelming. Her hair was different from last night, pink now, with streaks of blue that shifted as she moved. "You're sitting alone," she said. "I noticed." "You don't have to. I mean, you can sit with us. If you want. Wednesday usually eats in her room, so it's just me and Ajax and sometimes Yoko and..." "Why do you care where I sit?" The words came out sharper than he'd intended. Not mean. Just direct. The way he'd learned to be, sometimes, when the smiles didn't work and the politeness felt like lying. Enid blinked. Her hair flickered, the pink dimming for a moment before brightening again. "Because no one should eat alone," she said. Simple. Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Naruto looked at her. Really looked. At the openness of her face, the way her hands moved when she talked, the brightness of her eyes. She was like Sakura, he realized. Like Lee. Someone who wore their heart on the outside, who couldn't hide what they were feeling even if they tried. He'd spent his whole life surrounded by people like that. People who were loud and bright and warm, who pulled him into their orbits without asking, who made him believe that maybe he wasn't as alone as he'd always thought. "We'll see," he said. Enid's face fell for a moment, then brightened again. "Okay. Well, the offer's open. And hey." She leaned forward, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "If you need anything like anything, you can ask me. I know this place is weird. And Wednesday can be Wednesday. But you don't have to figure it all out alone." She stood. Flashed him a smile that was almost too bright to look at. And then she was gone, weaving through the tables toward a group of students who waved her over with the ease of people who had known each other for years. Naruto watched her go. Felt something twist in his chest. Something that might have been longing, or grief, or just the simple ache of seeing something familiar in a world that held nothing else. He finished his breakfast, left the dining hall, walked. The grounds of Nevermore were bigger than he'd expected. Gardens that had gone wild, their paths overgrown and their fountains dry. A greenhouse with windows so fogged he couldn't see inside. A stable that held no horses, just empty stalls and the smell of old hay, and something that might have been blood. And everywhere, the trees. They lined the edges of the property like sentinels. Tall, dark, their branches reaching toward the sky like hands begging for something they'd never receive. Naruto found himself walking toward them, drawn, almost, by the same instinct that had made him stop in the clearing last night. The sense that something was waiting, watching, deciding. He stopped at the edge of the property line. A low wall of stone, moss-covered and crumbling, marked the boundary between the academy's grounds and the blackwood beyond. Beyond the wall, the forest waited. It looked different in daylight. Less threatening. Almost ordinary. Trees and undergrowth and patches of shadow where the sun couldn't reach. But Naruto had learned not to trust appearances. He stood at the wall for a long time, staring into the trees, listening to the silence that seemed to radiate from them like heat from a fire. You shouldn't be here. He didn't turn. He'd heard her coming, the soft crunch of shoes on gravel, the rhythm of footsteps that were too deliberate to be casual. Good morning to you too, Wednesday. She came to stand beside him, close enough to talk, far enough to run. Her hands were clasped behind her back, her posture perfect, her face as blank as it had been last night. I read your journal, Naruto said. And you've been watching the woods for 3 years. You've documented 17 disappearances. You've tried to enter at least a dozen times, and every time, something stopped you. He turned to look at her. She didn't look away. Why didn't you tell anyone? Principal Weems is aware of my research. She believes the disappearances are unrelated. A matter of students choosing to leave Nevermore for reasons of their own. Do you believe that? No. Then why didn't you push harder? Go to the police? The town authorities? Someone who could actually do something? Wednesday's jaw tightened. Just slightly. The first crack he'd seen in her composure since they'd met. Because no one here believes in things that can't be explained. They hide behind words like transfers and personal reasons because the alternative is admitting that something is hunting their students, and they don't know how to stop it. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, flatter. I've learned that people will believe comfortable lies before they accept uncomfortable truths. Every time. Naruto looked at her. At the stillness of her hands, the precision of her posture, the way she held herself like someone who had learned, a long time ago, that no one was coming to help. He knew that posture. He'd worn it himself for years, before Irika, before Sasuke, before he'd learned that sometimes people did come through, sometimes people did care, sometimes the world was more than just a collection of lies that people told themselves to feel safe. I'm going into the woods, he said. Wednesday turned to face him fully. Her eyes narrowed. The woods that should have killed you last night. The woods that have killed everyone who's entered them in the past 3 years. You're going back in. Something in there wanted me here. Said someone was waiting for me. I need to know who. And why. That's reckless. Yeah. He smiled. Small. Wry. It kind of is. He expected her to argue. To point out the flaws in his logic, the danger of what he was planning, the fact that he was a stranger in a strange world with no backup and no plan. Instead, she said, I'm coming with you. He blinked. What? I've been trying to enter the Blackwood for 3 years. You survived a night in it. If anyone can get me past whatever's been blocking my way, it's you. You don't even know me. I know you walk through a forest that kills everyone who enters it. I know you claim to be from another world. I know you have abilities that don't exist in this one. She tilted her head. And I know you're not lying. About any of it. How can you tell? I've spent my entire life surrounded by liars. You're not one of them. Naruto stared at her. She stared back. And in the silence between them, he felt something shift. Not trust. Not friendship. Something smaller. More fragile. A recognition that went deeper than words. Fine, he said. But we do it my way. And what way is that? Carefully. We don't rush in. We watch. We listen. We don't engage unless we have to. He paused. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. No heroics. Just run. Wednesday's lips curved. That not smile again, sharp and small and somehow more honest than any expression he'd seen on her face. I don't run from anything. You will if I tell you to. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Once. Short. Decisive. When do we go? Tonight. After dark. The thing that spoke to me last night, it was active after the sun went down. If we're going to find answers, we go when it's hunting. And if it hunts us instead? Naruto turned back to the forest. Looked at the shadows between the trees, the darkness that seemed to breathe and shift even in the daylight. Then we find out what it wants. They spent the day preparing. Naruto found a training ground behind the stables, a stretch of open field that the students seemed to avoid, its grass overgrown and its edges swallowed by the encroaching trees. He ran through his forms. The katas that had been drilled into him since he was old enough to stand. The stretches that kept his body loose, his chakra flowing, his instincts sharp. His reserves were still low, reduced to maybe a quarter of what they should have been. But they were there, moving through his coils like water through a shallow stream. Not enough for the big techniques. Not enough for the kind of fights he'd trained for. But enough. He formed a hand seal. Focused. Let his chakra build in his chest, in his lungs, in the space where Kurama used to sleep. Shadow clone technique. The chakra released. Rushed through his body. And nothing. No clones. No copies. Just him, standing alone in the field, his chakra fizzling out before it could take form. He tried again. And again. And again. Nothing. His chakra was too low. The technique required a certain threshold, a certain density of energy that he just didn't have anymore. Naruto stood in the field. Let his hands drop. Let his breath slow. He'd known, intellectually, that coming to this world would change him. That the rules he'd grown up with, the techniques he'd spent his life perfecting, might not work here. But knowing something and feeling it were two different things. He looked at his hands. Hands that had stopped a war. Hands that had held the power of a god. Hands that had, for one brief moment, been the most powerful hands in the world. Now they were just hands. Naruto closed his eyes. Breathed. Let the frustration settle in his chest, let it sit there for a moment, let it be. Then he opened his eyes. Started again. He couldn't use shadow clones. Fine. He'd work with what he had. Basic techniques. Enhanced movement. The physical training that had been beaten into him over years of missions and wars and fights that had nearly killed him. He was still a ninja. Still trained. Still dangerous. He just had to remember how to be dangerous without the power he relied on for so long. Wednesday found him there, hours later. The sun was starting to set. The shadows were growing longer, reaching toward the academy like fingers stretching out of the dark. She stood at the edge of the field, watching, her hands clasped behind her back, her expression unreadable. You move differently than the others, she said. Naruto straightened from the stretch he'd been holding, rolled his shoulders, let his body settle back into rest. The others? The outcasts. The monsters. The people who train here because they don't know what else to do with their abilities. She stepped into the field. Her shoes made soft sounds in the grass. You move like someone who learned to fight because he had to. Not for sport. Not for glory. What do you move like? She stopped a few feet away. Looked at him with those dark, unreadable eyes. I move like someone who learned to survive. Naruto nodded. He'd expected that answer. Or something like it. There was a hardness to Wednesday that went deeper than the mask she wore. Something that had been carved into her the same way the missions and the wars had been carved into him. What did you find? He asked. She reached into her pocket. Pulled out a folded map, old and worn, its edges crumbling. Spread it on the grass between them. This is the Blackwood. 300 years of survey attempts, most of them incomplete. The forest changes. Paths shift. Landmarks disappear. She pointed to a spot near the center of the map. A blank space, surrounded by notes and handwriting that ranged from precise to frantic. This is where the first disappearances happened. 300 years ago. A group of Nevermore students entered the woods and never returned. The school sent search parties. They found nothing. No bodies. No signs of struggle. Just... She paused. Her finger traced a note in the margin, written in ink that had faded to brown. The feeling of being watched. Every search party reported it. The sense that something was standing just out of sight. Waiting. Naruto studied the map. The notes. The blank space at the center that seemed to pull the eye, to demand attention. That's where we're going, he said. Yes. And the thing that's been taking students. You think it's the same thing that took them 300 years ago. I think the woods have been hungry for a long time. And now, for reasons I haven't been able to determine, they're getting hungrier. Naruto looked up from the map. Looked at the forest, darkening as the sun sank lower. Looked at the shadows that seemed to move, just slightly, when he wasn't looking directly at them. You're scared, he said. Wednesday's face didn't change. But her hands did. They tightened, just slightly, on the edges of the map. I'm not scared of dying. What are you scared of? She didn't answer for a long time. The silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of insects starting their evening song, the rustle of leaves in a wind that was just beginning to rise. I'm scared of finding the truth, she said finally, and realizing I can't do anything about it. Naruto looked at her. At the tension in her jaw, the rigidity of her posture, the way she was holding herself like a drawn bowstring. He thought about the first time he'd faced an enemy he couldn't beat. The first time he'd watched someone die because he wasn't strong enough to save them. The first time he'd understood that wanting something wasn't enough, that wishing and hoping and believing didn't mean anything if you didn't have the power to back it up. I know that fear, he said. She looked at him. For a moment, just a moment, her mask slipped. He saw something underneath. Something raw. Something that looked almost like recognition. Can you fight? She asked. I can always fight. Can you win? He smiled. Not the big smile. Not the fake smile. Something smaller. Something that was almost honest. I don't know. But I'm not going to stop trying. Wednesday stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Folded the map. Put it back in her pocket. Sunset in 20 minutes, she said. We should move. She turned. Started walking toward the edge of the field, toward the forest, toward the darkness that waited between the trees. Naruto followed. The Blackwood was different at night. Naruto noticed it the moment they crossed the stone wall. The temperature dropped. The air thickened. The sounds of the academy, voices, footsteps, the distant hum of electricity, faded into nothing. And the silence returned. Not the silence of a forest at night. Not the quiet of animals sleeping and wind stilling. This was the silence of something waiting. Of breath held. Of a predator watching its prey and deciding when to strike. Wednesday walked beside him. Her footsteps were quiet, deliberate, the footsteps of someone who had learned to move without being heard. But her breathing was faster than it had been in the field. Her shoulders were tighter. She was scared. Not of him. Not of the dark. Of what lived in it. Naruto reached out. Touched her arm. She stopped. Looked at his hand, then at his face. What? The silence. Is it always like this? She listened. Her brow furrowed. I've never been this far in before. But yes. The silence is part of it. The woods go quiet when something is near. Naruto let his hand drop. Let his senses spread out, searching for the familiar feel of chakra, of life energy, of anything that might tell him what was waiting in the dark. Nothing. The forest was empty in a way that forests shouldn't be empty. No birds. No insects. No small animals moving through the undergrowth. Just the trees. And the silence. And the feeling of being watched. It's close, he said. Whatever it is. It's been following us since we crossed the wall. Wednesday's hand moved to her pocket. Naruto saw the outline of something small and sharp, a knife, maybe, or something worse. Can you see it? No. But I can feel it. He closed his eyes. Reached deeper. Past the silence, past the emptiness, to the thing that lurked at the edge of his perception. It was cold. That was the first thing he noticed. A cold that went deeper than temperature, that seeped into his bones and settled in his chest. And it was hungry. Not the hunger of a predator looking for food. Something older. Deeper. A hunger that had been waiting for a long time, that had grown patient with age, that had learned to feed on things that weren't physical. It was feeding on something now. On the fear that radiated from Wednesday, the tension in her muscles, the quickness of her breath. On him, too. On the loneliness that had lived in his chest since he was old enough to understand what it meant to be alone. Naruto opened his eyes. We need to move, he said. Now. He grabbed Wednesday's arm and pulled her forward. She stumbled for a moment, then found her rhythm, matching his pace, moving through the trees with the kind of speed that came from practice and desperation. Behind them, the silence broke. Not with sound. With movement. The trees shifting, their branches reaching, their roots rising from the earth to block the path. The shadows lengthening, darkening, becoming solid where shadows shouldn't be solid. And beneath it all, a voice. The same voice he'd heard last night. High and reedy, like wind through cracked glass. Running, little ninja? After you came so far to find me? Naruto didn't answer. Didn't slow. He pulled Wednesday faster, moving through the trees, looking for something, anything, that might give them an advantage. There's a clearing ahead, Wednesday said, her voice tight but controlled. On the map. The center of the woods. Is that good or bad? I don't know. No one's ever reached it before. Behind them, the voice laughed. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around them, pressing against them. You brought someone new. Someone fresh. Someone who's been waiting for so long to be found. Naruto's chest tightened. The voice knew him. Not his name, not his face, but something deeper. Something that had been waiting for him since the moment he fell through the rift. You want me? He said. Not a question. I want what you carry. What you've always carried. The emptiness. The loneliness. The void that lives where love should be. The trees parted. The clearing opened before them. And Naruto saw, for the first time, what had been waiting in the woods. It was not a creature. That was the first thing he realized. The thing in the center of the clearing was not a monster, not a demon, not anything he'd faced before. It was a wound. A tear in the world itself. A crack in reality that bled darkness into the air, that pulsed with a hunger that went beyond physical, that existed because something had once been here and was now gone. And standing in front of the wound, waiting, was a girl. She was young. Younger than him. Maybe 16, maybe less. Her hair was dark, her skin was pale, her eyes were black in a way that had nothing to do with color. She smiled when she saw him. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're late, she said. I've been waiting for so long. Wednesday stepped forward. Her knife was in her hand now, small and sharp and utterly useless against what stood before them. Who are you? The girl tilted her head. Looked at Wednesday the way a cat might look at a mouse it wasn't sure it wanted to eat. I was a student here once. A long time ago. Before the woods became what they are. Before the hunger. She looked back at Naruto. Her smile widened. But you knew that, didn't you? You could feel it. The emptiness. The hunger. The thing that lives in the space between worlds, where nothing exists and nothing grows. Naruto's hands curled into fists. His chakra stirred in his chest, weak but present, ready to fight. What do you want? The girl laughed. The sound was wrong, hollow, like an echo of something that had once been real. I want to go home. I've been trapped here for 300 years, feeding on the fear and loneliness of anyone who comes close enough to touch. And then you appeared. Someone who carries more emptiness than anyone I've ever met. Someone who might finally be enough to open the door. She stepped forward. The darkness around her pulsed. The wound behind her throbbed. You're going to let me out, little ninja. You're going to give me what I need. And then I'm going to go home. She reached for him. Her fingers brushed his chest. And in that moment, Naruto felt it, the hunger she'd been talking about. The void inside him that had been carved out by years of loneliness, of rejection, of being told he wasn't wanted. She was feeding on it, pulling it out of him like drawing water from a well. And he was letting her. No. The word came from somewhere deep. From the part of him that had survived worse than this. From the part of him that had faced demons and gods and monsters and never given up. You don't get to take this from me. He grabbed her wrist. Squeezed. Felt the wrongness of her skin, the coldness of her touch. You want to go home? He said. His voice was rough. Raw. Fine. But you're not taking anything from me. Not my pain. Not my loneliness. Not the things I've earned. Her eyes widened. The first real emotion he'd seen on her face. You don't understand. I understand, he said. You're scared. You're alone. You've been waiting for someone to save you for so long that you forgot how to save yourself. He pulled her closer. Met her eyes. Let her see everything he carried. The loneliness. The pain. The fear that he'd never be enough, never be wanted, never be anything more than the container for something terrible. But I'm not your way out. You have to find your own path. Just like I've been finding mine. He pushed. Not with chakra. Not with strength. With something deeper. Something that was more him than any technique or power or weapon. He pushed with hope. The girl's face cracked. The mask she'd been wearing for 300 years broke. And underneath, she was just a child. A girl who had been scared and alone and hungry for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be anything else. Please, she whispered. I just want to go home. Naruto looked at her. At the wound behind her. At the darkness that pulsed between them. He thought about Sasuke. About the choices he'd made, the people he'd hurt, the darkness he'd carried. He thought about how he'd reached out, again and again, refusing to give up, refusing to let go. He thought about what it cost to be saved. Then let go, he said. Stop feeding. Stop hurting. Stop being something you're not. The girl stared at him. Her hands were shaking. The darkness around her was flickering, fading, collapsing in on itself. I don't know how. Then learn. Start with one thing. One person. One moment where you choose to be something other than what they made you. He looked at Wednesday. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Not fear. Not surprise. Something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. We'll help, he said. But you have to stop. You have to want to stop. The girl's face crumpled. The darkness around her shattered. And for a moment, just a moment, Naruto saw her. The real her. The girl who had been lost for 300 years, who had been waiting for someone to see her, to reach out, to offer something other than fear and hunger and pain. She reached for him. Her fingers brushed his chest again. But this time, she wasn't taking. She was giving. Something passed between them. Something that felt like gratitude, and grief, and the first stirrings of something that might have been hope. And then she was gone. The wound behind her sealed. The darkness faded. And the forest was just a forest, full of trees and shadows and the ordinary silence of a world that had no need for demons. Naruto stood in the clearing for a long time, staring at the place where the girl had been, feeling the emptiness in his chest where her hunger had touched him. You let her go, Wednesday said. He didn't turn. She wasn't the enemy. She was just lost. You don't know that. She could have been lying. She could have been planning to kill us the moment you let your guard down. Maybe. He looked down at his hands. The hands that had held the power of a god. The hands that had failed to save people he loved. The hands that were just hands now. But she was scared. And alone. And I know what that feels like. Wednesday was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. You carry more than most people. More than I thought anyone could carry. Naruto finally turned. Looked at her. At the darkness of her eyes, the stillness of her face, the way she held herself like a blade waiting to be drawn. Maybe that's why I'm still here, he said. Maybe that's why I fell into this world instead of somewhere else. Because she needed someone who understood what it was like to carry something you didn't ask for. Wednesday stepped forward. Stopped in front of him. Looked up at his face with those dark, unreadable eyes. You're strange, she said. You have power you can barely use. You're in a world that isn't yours. And you still chose to help someone who was trying to hurt you. It's what I do. Why? He thought about it. About the years of loneliness. The years of reaching out and being rejected. The years of learning that the only way to survive was to keep caring, even when caring hurt. Because someone did it for me, he said. When I didn't deserve it. When I hadn't earned it. When I was just a scared kid who didn't know how to be anything other than angry. He paused. And because I'm tired of watching people become monsters when all they needed was someone to see them. Wednesday stared at him. The silence stretched between them, filled with the sounds of the forest slowly returning to life. The first crickets. The first rustle of leaves in a wind that no longer carried hunger. You're staying, she said. Not a question. Naruto looked at her. At the girl who had spent 3 years documenting disappearances that no one else believed in. At the girl who carried her own emptiness behind a mask of blankness and sharp words. At the girl who, for the first time in a long time, had made him feel like maybe he wasn't as alone as he thought. For now. She nodded once. Short. Decisive. Acceptable. She turned. Started walking back toward the academy. Her footsteps were lighter than before. Her shoulders less tight. Naruto watched her go. Felt something stir in his chest. Not Kurama. Not chakra. Something smaller. Quieter. Something that felt almost like belonging. He smiled. Small. Real. The kind of smile he'd almost forgotten he could wear. And then he followed her out of the woods. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3, Echoes of Home. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence from the woods. 3 days of students whispering about the strange boy who had walked into the Blackwood and walked out again, twice, without a scratch. 3 days of Weems watching him with eyes that saw too much and said too little. 3 days of Wednesday. She appeared in his life the way she did everything else, precisely, deliberately, without explanation. She was there when he woke up, sitting in the hallway outside his room, reading a book that looked older than most of the buildings in Konoha. She was there at meals, appearing beside him with a tray of food she didn't eat, watching the other students with the same blank intensity she brought to everything else. She didn't talk much. That was fine. Naruto had never been good with silence, but hers was different from the silence he'd grown up with. It wasn't empty. It wasn't waiting for him to fill it. It was just there. A presence that didn't demand anything from him. On the third day, she found him on the training ground. He was practicing his forms again. The same katas he'd been doing since he was old enough to stand. But there was something different about them now. Something that Wednesday noticed immediately. "You're slower," she said from the edge of the field. Naruto didn't stop. He was in the middle of a sequence, 3 strikes, a pivot, a sweep that would have knocked most opponents off their feet. It was clean. Precise. But not fast. Not the blur of movement that had once been as natural as breathing. "I'm adjusting," he said. "To what?" He finished the sequence. Dropped into a resting stance. Let his breath even out. "To being weaker." Wednesday stepped onto the field. Her shoes made soft sounds in the grass. She stopped a few feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to run. "You don't look weaker." "I'm not. Physically, I'm about the same as I always was. Maybe a little stronger, actually. The training doesn't go away." "But?" He looked at his hands. At the calluses on his palms, the scars across his knuckles, the faint lines where he'd been cut and burned and healed and cut again. "But I'm missing something. Chakra. It's like having an extra limb, and then waking up one day and it's gone. You don't need it to walk. You don't need it to breathe. But everything you do differently because you had it. And now you don't." Wednesday was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down on the grass, crossed her legs, looked up at him with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Show me." "What?" "What you can do. What you can't. Show me." Naruto stared at her. She stared back. There was no pity in her face. No curiosity even. Just the same blank attention she brought to everything else. He sat down across from her. The grass was cool beneath him, damp with morning dew. "My chakra is about a quarter of what it used to be. Maybe less. I can't use my main techniques. Shadow clones. Rasengan. Anything that requires a lot of energy." He formed a hand seal. Let his chakra build in his chest. The energy moved sluggishly, heavy as mud. "Clone technique." A copy of him appeared beside him. Solid for a moment, long enough for Wednesday's eyes to widen, just slightly, and then it dissolved into nothing. "It's not the same," he said. "Back home, I could make hundreds. Thousands. Enough to fill a battlefield. Now I can barely make one, and it doesn't last." He let his hands drop. Looked at the grass, at the sky, at anything but her face. "I was the strongest person in my world," he said quietly. "Not because I was born that way. Because I worked for it. Because I had people who believed in me. Because I had a demon inside me that gave me power when I didn't have enough on my own." He paused. "And now I'm here. And I'm nothing." The words hung in the air. Heavy. Ugly. The kind of truth he'd been carrying since he landed in this world, the kind he hadn't let himself say out loud because saying it made it real. Wednesday didn't respond immediately. She sat there, still as stone, her eyes fixed on his face. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "You're not nothing." He looked up. Met her eyes. "You walked into a forest that kills everyone who enters it. You faced something that had been hunting for 300 years. And instead of fighting it, you understood it. She paused. I've spent my entire life around people who claim to be powerful. Psychics. Telekinetics. Shapeshifters. People who can bend reality with a thought. And most of them are weak. Not in power. In everything else. She looked at his hands. The calloused hands. The scarred hands. The hands that had done things she couldn't imagine. You're not nothing, she said again. You're something I've never seen before. Naruto stared at her. Something in his chest tightened. Not the loneliness. Not the emptiness. Something else. Something that felt almost like being seen. You're not very good at comforting people, he said. I'm not trying to comfort you. I'm telling you the truth. He smiled. Small. Real. The kind of smile that came without thinking. Yeah. I know. They sat in the grass for a while. The sun rose higher. The shadows shortened. Students began to appear in the windows of the academy, looking out at the strange boy and the strange girl sitting together in the field. Enid appeared at the edge of the training ground. Her hair was bright pink today, almost neon in the morning light. She was waving at them, saying something they couldn't hear, bouncing on her heels with the kind of energy that seemed to fill every space she entered. She wants you to come to breakfast, Wednesday said. How can you tell? She always wants people to come to breakfast. She wants everyone to be happy. It's exhausting. Naruto looked at Enid. At her waving arms, her bright smile, her obvious desire to include them in whatever she was doing. He thought about Sakura. About the way she dragged him and Sasuke into things, back when they were kids, back before everything got complicated and painful and hard. Maybe we should go, he said. Wednesday looked at him. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Relaxed, almost. Enid will talk. Constantly. About nothing. I know. And she'll try to make us sit with her friends, who will stare at us. I know. And the food is terrible. Naruto stood. Held out his hand. Wednesday looked at it. For a moment he thought she'd refuse. That she'd stand on her own, the way she always did, the way she'd learned to do because no one had ever been there to help her up. But she took his hand. Her fingers were cold. Precise. Strong. She stood. Didn't let go immediately. Looked up at him with those dark eyes. You're not going to find a way home, she said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The words should have hurt. Should have been a knife in the chest, a reminder of everything he'd lost, everything he'd left behind. But they weren't. Because she wasn't saying it to hurt him. She was saying it because it was true. And because, for reasons he didn't fully understand, she wanted him to know that she saw it too. I know, he said. And you're staying anyway. He looked at the academy. At the stone walls and the arched windows and the students moving through its halls. At Enid, still waving, still smiling, still waiting for them to come in from the cold. At Wednesday, standing beside him, her hand still in his, her face as blank as it had been the night they met. For now, he said. She nodded, let go of his hand, started walking toward the academy. And Naruto followed. Enid talked. Constantly. About everything. About the classes she was taking, the friends she had, the boy she liked who maybe liked her back but she wasn't sure because he was, like, emotionally constipated, you know? About the weather, which was so weird lately, like, the trees are all wrong and I swear I saw something move in the greenhouse last night but Ajax said it was probably just a raccoon, and I mean, it could be a raccoon, but also it could be. Naruto nodded. Made sounds that might have been responses. Ate food that tasted like nothing, because everything tasted like nothing these days. Because nothing tasted like Ichiraku ramen and maybe nothing ever would again. Wednesday sat beside him. She wasn't eating. She was watching the other students with the same intensity she brought to everything else. She's staring at us, Wednesday said. Naruto looked up. Across the dining hall, a girl with silver hair was watching them. She was beautiful in a sharp, angular way. Her eyes were pale, almost colorless, and they didn't blink when Naruto met them. That's Bianca, Enid said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She's the queen bee. Leader of the Nightshades. Total mean girl vibes, but also kind of terrifying, so no one really says anything. Why is she staring? Enid's hair flickered. Pink to purple to pink again. Because you walked out of the Blackwood. Twice. And because you're sitting with Wednesday. She looked at Wednesday with something that might have been admiration or fear or both. People don't usually sit with Wednesday. Why not? Enid opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Wednesday, who was still watching Bianca with an expression that could have been carved from stone. Wednesday, Enid said carefully. Do you want to explain, or should I? There's nothing to explain. People don't sit with me because I don't invite them to sit with me. Okay, but also because you, Enid, threatened to feed Bianca's ex-boyfriend to your pet scorpion that one time, which, for the record, was actually kind of iconic, but also maybe not the best way to make friends. Wednesday's lips curved. That not smile, sharp and small. Nero would have enjoyed him. Enid made a sound that was half laugh, half groan. Her hair shifted through 3 colors in rapid succession. Naruto looked across the hall again. Bianca was still watching them, but her expression had changed. Not hostile. Something else. Something that looked almost like curiosity. She met his eyes, held them for a moment. Then she smiled, a small, knowing smile, and looked away. She's going to talk to you, Wednesday said. How do you know? Because she's curious. And Bianca Barkley has never let curiosity go unsatisfied. Naruto looked at Wednesday. At the tension in her jaw, the way her hands had gone still on the table. You don't like her. I don't like anyone. You don't trust her. Wednesday was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than usual. Bianca is the most powerful psychic at this school. She could make you see things that aren't there. Feel things you don't want to feel. Believe things that aren't true. She paused. She's also the reason I'm still here. Naruto waited. Wednesday didn't elaborate. She stopped me from leaving, Wednesday said finally. When I first arrived. When I decided this place was no different from any other school, any other prison, any other attempt to make me something I'm not. She told me that Nevermore wasn't about becoming normal. It was about becoming something else. Something that didn't need to be normal. She looked at Bianca across the hall. Something flickered in her expression. Something that might have been respect, or resentment, or both. She was right. That doesn't mean I trust her. Naruto nodded. He understood that kind of relationship. The kind that was built on respect and wariness in equal measure. The kind that Sasuke and he had, back when they were kids, back when everything was simpler and harder all at once. You should talk to her, he said. Wednesday's head turned. Her eyes narrowed. Why? Because she might know something about the woods. About what happened 300 years ago. About the girl in the clearing. She would have told me if she knew something. Would she? You said you don't trust her. Maybe she doesn't trust you either. Wednesday stared at him. The silence stretched. Enid had stopped talking, her eyes wide, her hair frozen somewhere between blue and green. You're infuriating, Wednesday said. So I've been told. You think you understand people. You think you can see through their masks because you've worn so many yourself. Can't I? She didn't answer. She stood. Pushed her chair back with more force than necessary. Enid, show him the library. He needs to understand this world if he's going to survive in it. She walked away. Her footsteps were sharp on the stone floor. Precise. Angry maybe, though Naruto couldn't tell. Her anger looked like everything else. Enid let out a breath she'd been holding. Wow, she said. She really doesn't like being wrong. Is she wrong? Enid looked at him. Her hair shifted to a soft pink, the color of sunrise. I don't think so, she said quietly. I think she's scared. Of trusting people. Of letting them in. Of being let down again. She paused. I think you might be the first person she's met who understands that. Naruto looked at the door Wednesday had disappeared through. At the space she'd left behind, empty and waiting. She's not the only one, he said. The library was bigger than any building in Konoha. Naruto stood in the doorway and stared. Rows of shelves stretched into the distance, disappearing into shadows that seemed to go on forever. There were balconies above, reached by spiral stairs that looked like they'd been there for centuries. And in the center of it all, a massive globe that turned slowly, its surface marked with constellations he didn't recognize. It's called the Celestial Globe, Enid said beside him. It's supposed to show the alignment of the stars on the day Nevermore was founded. No one really knows how it works. It's beautiful, Naruto said. The word felt small. Inadequate. but it was the only word he had. Enid smiled. Her hair brightened, just a little. I thought you might like it. Wednesday says you're from another world. I figured you might want to know about this one. She led him through the stacks. Her steps were lighter than Wednesday's, less deliberate, more like someone who was comfortable in this space, who had spent time here, who belonged. Nevermore was founded in 1791, she said, reciting like she'd memorized the words. By a woman named Nevermore Adams. She believed that people with abilities, outcasts she called them, needed a place where they could learn to control their powers without being feared or hunted. Adams? Naruto said. Enid's smile flickered. Yeah. Wednesday's family. They've been connected to this place since the beginning. Her great-great-great-grandmother or something like that. She stopped in front of a shelf, pulled down a book that was bigger than her head, thumped it onto a reading table with a sound that echoed through the stacks. This is the history of the Blackwood. Everything we know about it. Which, honestly, isn't much. The forest has always been there. Always been dangerous. But it didn't start hunting until about 300 years ago. Naruto sat down, opened the book. The pages were old, the ink faded, the handwriting ornate in a way that made it hard to read. There was a student, Enid said quietly. A girl. She disappeared in 1723. The first one. After she disappeared, the woods changed. People started feeling like they were being watched. Animals left. The birds stopped singing. She sat down across from him. Her hair had gone pale, almost white, the color of fear. They say she's still there. Waiting. Watching. Looking for someone to take her place. Naruto looked at the book. At the pages of names, dates, disappearances. At the pattern that emerged from the chaos, the rhythm of hunger and waiting and hunger again. The girl in the clearing, he said. She was waiting for something. Not just to be free. To be replaced. Enid's eyes went wide. You saw her? I saw something. A girl. A wound in the world. She was feeding on fear. On loneliness. On the things people carried when they didn't have anyone to share the weight. He closed the book. Looked at Enid. At the brightness of her hair, the openness of her face, the way she wore her heart like a badge of honor. She wanted me to take her place. To stay in the woods so she could leave. Enid's hand shot across the table. Grabbed his wrist. Her fingers were warm, almost hot, pressing against his skin. You didn't. No. I told her she had to find her own way out. Enid stared at him. Her hair shifted through a dozen colors in the space of a breath. Pink and blue and green and yellow and orange, like a sunrise compressed into seconds. That's so you, she said. I've only known you for 3 days, and that's the most you think you could have done. Naruto blinked. What does that mean? It means you're not like anyone here. You're not like anyone anywhere, probably. She let go of his wrist. Sat back. Looked at him with something that might have been wonder. You faced a thing that's been killing people for 300 years, and instead of fighting it, you tried to save it. That's insane. That's also kind of beautiful. Naruto didn't know what to say. He looked at the book, at the names of the dead, at the pattern of hunger that stretched back centuries. I didn't save her, he said. I just didn't let her take anything from me. You gave her hope, Enid said. That's not nothing. She stood, brushed off her skirt. Her hair had settled back to pink, the color of her voice when she was trying to be cheerful. I should go. Ajax wanted to meet me before class. But you should stay. Read. Learn about this place. It's your home now, at least for a while. She started to walk away. Then stopped. Turned back. Hey, Naruto? Yeah? If you ever need someone to talk to, someone who isn't Wednesday, I'm here. Okay? I know I'm not what you're used to. But I'm here. She smiled. It was bright and warm and honest. The kind of smile that didn't ask for anything in return. Then she was gone, her footsteps fading into the silence of the library. Naruto sat alone at the table. The book was open in front of him. The globe turned slowly in the center of the room. And somewhere, in the back of his mind, he felt the echo of something that had been waiting for him since he arrived. Not the girl in the woods. Something else. Something that had been watching him since the moment he fell through the rift. He closed the book. Stood. Walked toward the globe. It was bigger up close. 3 meters across, maybe more. Its surface was carved with images, stars and planets, and things that might have been constellations, might have been something else. The metal was warm to the touch. warmer than it should have been. He put his hand on it. And felt. Chakra. Not his. Not Kurama's. Something older. Something that had been waiting in this room for longer than the building had stood. The globe turned. Faster than it should have. Faster than physics allowed. The images on its surface blurred, became light, became something that wasn't quite light and wasn't quite shadow. And then he saw it. A map. Not of this world. Of worlds. Of the spaces between worlds. Of the paths that connected everything to everything else. And at the center of the map, a point of light. Home. The vision lasted a second. Maybe less. Then the globe slowed. The images resolved back into constellations he didn't recognize. The warmth faded from the metal. But Naruto stood there for a long time, hand pressed against the globe, feeling the echo of what he'd seen. There was a way back. A path through the spaces between worlds. A door that had been opened once and could be opened again. He just had to find it. He found Wednesday in the greenhouse. It was the last place he expected to look. The greenhouse was overgrown, its windows fogged, its paths choked with plants that had long since escaped their pots. But there she was, standing in the center of it all, her hands covered in dirt, her face set in concentration. She was talking to something. A plant, maybe? Or something that looked like a plant but moved when he got closer, its leaves turning toward her like flowers toward the sun. "You found the globe," she said without turning. Naruto stopped a few feet away. "How did you know?" "Your chakra. It's weak here, but I've learned to feel it. Like a current under the surface of a river." She turned. Her hands were stained green and brown. There was dirt on her cheek. Her hair was coming loose from its braid. "You saw something." "A map. A way home." She didn't react. Didn't flinch. But something in her posture shifted. Tightened. "There's a door," he said. "A path through the spaces between worlds. The globe showed it to me. Can you open it?" "I don't know. Maybe. If I had enough chakra. If I understood how it worked." Wednesday looked at him for a long moment. Then she went back to her plants. Her fingers moved through the soil, gentle in a way he'd never seen her be gentle. "You're going to leave?" she said. Not a question. "I don't know. I don't know if I can open the door. I don't know if I can even get enough chakra to try. I don't know anything, Wednesday." He sat down on a bench that was half covered in moss. Looked at his hands. The hands that had held power beyond anything this world could imagine. The hands that were just hands now. "But if I can go back. I have to. There are people waiting for me. People who need me." Wednesday was quiet. Her hands moved through the soil, steady and sure. "What if you can't go back?" she asked. "What if the door is closed? What if this is your home now?" Naruto looked at her. At the dirt on her face, the looseness of her hair, the way her hands were gentler than her face had ever been. "Then I stay," he said. "And I figure out how to be here. How to be someone in a world that doesn't have chakra or demons or wars waiting to be fought." He paused. "How to be someone who doesn't need to be the strongest thing in the room to be worth something." Wednesday's hand stopped moving. She looked at him. Really looked. Her eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something in them that he hadn't seen before. Something that looked almost like hope. "You're strange," she said again. "You carry more than anyone I've ever met. You've lost more than anyone I've ever met. And you're still here. Still smiling. Still trying." She stood. Brushed the dirt from her hands. "I don't understand you." "I don't understand you either," he said. She almost smiled. Not the sharp, small knot smile. Something softer. Something that was almost real. "Good," she said. "Then we're even." She walked past him. Paused at the door of the greenhouse. Looked back. "The globe only turns for people who are connected to the spaces between worlds. Only people who have been where you've been can see what you saw." She paused. "You're not the first person to fall into this world, Naruto. You're just the first one to survive it." She left. The door closed behind her. And Naruto sat alone in the greenhouse, surrounded by plants that moved when he wasn't looking, and thought about what she'd said. He wasn't the first. Which meant somewhere, in the 300 years of disappearances, there was another person like him. Someone who had fallen through the cracks between worlds and landed here. Someone who might have found a way back. Or someone who had stayed. He stood. Walked back toward the library. Toward the globe that showed the way home. He had a lot of reading to do. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Weight of History. The archives were forbidden. Wednesday told him this as she led him down a staircase that spiraled into darkness, her flashlight cutting a narrow path through the dust and shadows. Principal Weems believes certain information is too dangerous for students to access. What kind of information? The kind that might explain what's happening in the woods. They reached the bottom of the stairs. A door stood before them, old wood banded with iron, a lock that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Wednesday produced a key from her pocket. Slipped it into the lock. Turned. Where did you get that? I made it. Of course she did. The door swung open. The smell that came out was old, paper and dust and something else, something that might have been decay, or preservation, or both. The room beyond was small. Smaller than Naruto expected. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books and scrolls and things that might have been journals. In the center, a table held a single object, a box, carved from wood that had darkened with age, its surface marked with symbols he almost recognized. The Nevermore Family Archives, Wednesday said. Documents from the founding of the Academy. Personal journals. Research notes. Things that were never meant to see the light of day. She walked to the shelves. Began pulling things down with the ease of someone who had done this before. I've been coming here for 2 years. Looking for answers. For patterns. For anything that might explain what's happening in the woods. And? She turned. In her hands was a journal, its leather cover cracked, its pages yellow with age. And I found this. She handed it to him. The journal was heavy. Old. The handwriting inside was cramped, precise, the handwriting of someone who believed in order. Journal of Morticia Adams, 1791-1793. Naruto looked up. Morticia Adams? Wednesday's great-great-great-grandmother. The founder of Nevermore. She sat on the edge of the table. Read. He opened the journal. The first entry was dated June 12, 1791. Today we broke ground on the Academy. Nevermore. A place for the outcasts, the forgotten, the ones the world has no use for. My father believes it's a waste of money. My mother believes it's a sin. I believe it's necessary. There are things in this world that cannot be explained. People who carry abilities that have no place in the natural order. They are hunted. Feared. Destroyed. I will give them a home. Naruto turned the pages. Read about the construction of the academy, the first students, the early years of a place that was trying to be something new. The entries changed around 1793. Something is wrong with the woods. The land has always been strange, it's why I chose it, why I knew it would be a place where outcasts could thrive. But something has changed. The students are complaining of nightmares. Of being watched. Of hearing whispers when no one is there. I walked to the edge of the property today. The forest was silent. Not peaceful. Wrong. Like the world itself was holding its breath. He looked at Wednesday. She was watching him, her face unreadable. It started with her, he said. The silence. The hunger. Keep reading. He turned more pages. The handwriting became less precise. More frantic. I found her today. In the clearing. The one the students call the heart of the woods. She was just a girl. Barely 16. Her name was... The name was scratched out. So heavily that the paper was torn. She was a student. One of the first. She had a gift, the ability to see the spaces between worlds. To walk paths that no one else could see. Something followed her back. Something from the spaces between. Something that had been waiting for a door to open. Naruto's hands tightened on the journal. The spaces between worlds. The path he'd fallen through. The door the globe had shown him. It feeds on loneliness. On fear. On the things people carry when they have no one to share the weight. The girl was alone. No family. No friends. No one who cared if she lived or died. It found her. And it made her a part of itself. I tried to save her. Tried to close the door she'd opened. But I was too late. The hunger was already here. Already part of the woods. Already part of her. I've done what I can. Sealed the heart of the woods. Contained the hunger. But it's not enough. It will never be enough. The door is open, and I don't know how to close it. I've written to the elders. To the ones who understand the spaces between. They say there's only one way to close a door like this. One way to seal a wound in the world. A sacrifice. Someone must stay in the woods. Someone must feed the hunger. Someone must take the girl's place. I will not ask anyone else to make that choice. I will do it myself. Naruto stared at the page. At the last entry, dated December 24, 1793. Tonight I go into the woods. Tonight I take her place. Tonight I become the thing that hunts in the dark. If you're reading this, know that I did not want this. I did not choose this. But I could not let anyone else carry what she carried. The door is open. The path between worlds is broken. And I am the only one who can keep the darkness from spreading. Forgive me. The journal ended. No more entries. No more words. Naruto closed it. Looked at Wednesday. Her face was pale in the dim light, her hands still at her sides. She didn't succeed, he said. No. She tried. But she wasn't strong enough. Or she wasn't what the hunger wanted. She took the journal from him. Held it carefully, like something fragile. The hunger wanted the girl. The girl who saw the spaces between. The girl who carried something no one else carried. She looked at him. Her eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something in them that he hadn't seen before. Something that looked almost like fear. You carry the same thing, she said. The connection to the spaces between. The door in your chest that leads somewhere else. That's why you survived the woods. That's why the hunger wants you. Naruto stood in the silence. Felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. I'm not going to take her place, he said. I know. I'm going to close the door. She tilted her head. How? I don't know yet. But there's a way. There has to be a way. He looked at the shelves, at the years of research, at the accumulated knowledge of people who had been trying to solve this problem for 3 centuries. Morticia tried to seal it. She didn't have enough power. But I'm not from this world. I carry something she didn't carry. Chakra. Chakra. The ability to shape energy in ways this world doesn't understand. If I can get enough of it, if I can find the door and push enough power through it, I can close it for good. Wednesday was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to the shelves. Began pulling down more journals, more research, more pieces of a puzzle that had been waiting for 300 years. Then we have work to do, she said. They worked through the night. Wednesday read faster than anyone Naruto had ever seen. She devoured journals, cross-referenced entries, built connections between events that spanned centuries. Her hands moved constantly, flipping pages, making notes, drawing diagrams that seemed to make sense only to her. Naruto read what he could. The words were old, the handwriting difficult, the concepts foreign. But he understood enough. He understood that the door between worlds had been opened by a girl who was scared and alone, who had reached for something she didn't understand because she had nothing else to reach for. He understood because he'd done the same thing. So many times. Reaching for power, for acceptance, for anything that would fill the emptiness where love should have been. The difference was, when he reached, something reached back. Kurama. The fox. The thing that had lived in his chest for as long as he could remember. But Kurama wasn't a monster. Not really. He was something else. Something that had learned to care, in its own way. Something that had chosen to protect, in the end. The girl in the woods hadn't been so lucky. When she reached, something reached back. But it didn't care. It didn't protect. It just fed. And now it had been feeding for 300 years. We're missing something, Wednesday said. It was hours later. The candles had burned low. The room was full of shadows. Naruto looked up from the journal he'd been reading. What? The door. Morticia tried to seal it. She couldn't. She didn't have enough power. But she was one of the most powerful psychics of her generation. If she couldn't do it, what makes you think you can? Chakra, he said. I told you. It's different from anything in this world. Is it? She stood. Walked to the table. Spread her diagrams in front of him. Look at this. He looked. The diagrams showed the flow of energy around the blackwood. Patterns that repeated over decades, centuries. Patterns that seemed to pulse, to breathe, to live. The hunger doesn't just feed on people, Wednesday said. It feeds on the energy between worlds. The same energy that powers your chakra. The same energy that runs through the globe in the library. She pointed to a spot on the diagram. The heart of the woods. The clearing where he'd faced the girl. The door is open. Not wide, Morticia sealed it enough to keep the worst from coming through. But it's open. And as long as it's open, the hunger will keep feeding. It will keep growing. And eventually it will break through. She looked at him. Her face was serious, intent. If you tried to close it with chakra, it might not work. Or it might make things worse. The hunger is connected to the spaces between worlds. Your chakra comes from the spaces between worlds. If you push too much power into the door, you might open it wider. You might let something worse through. Naruto stared at the diagrams. At the patterns of hunger and waiting and hunger again. At the 300 years of people who had tried and failed and died. What do you think I should do? Wednesday was quiet for a long time. Her hands were still on the table. Her face was still. But her eyes were moving, reading, calculating. I think you should do what you did before, she said finally. You went into the woods. You faced the hunger. And instead of fighting it, you understood it. She paused. You offered it something it didn't expect. Hope. He looked at her. You think I can do the same thing with the door? I think the door isn't the problem. The door is just a wound. The hunger is what's keeping it open. If you can heal the hunger, if you can give it something other than fear and loneliness to feed on, the door might close on its own. Naruto thought about the girl in the clearing. The way she'd reached for him. The way she'd taken something from him, but given something back. The way she'd looked, for a moment, like she might be something other than a monster. You think she can be saved? Wednesday met his eyes. I think you're the only person who's ever tried. They left the archives as the sun was rising. Naruto's eyes burned. His head ached. His chakra felt thin, stretched, like a rope that had been pulled too tight. But he knew what he had to do. Wednesday walked beside him. She looked as fresh as she had when they started, maybe more so. Her eyes were bright, her steps sure. The hunger comes from loneliness, she said. From fear. From the things people carry when they have no one to share the weight. If you can give it something else, if you can show it that it doesn't have to feed. I know. He stopped at the edge of the training ground. Looked at the woods in the distance. But it's been feeding for 300 years. It doesn't know how to be anything else. Then you teach it. He looked at her. At the dirt on her face, the looseness of her hair, the way she was looking at him like he'd already done the impossible. You sound like you believe in me. I believe in evidence. You've walked into the Blackwood twice. You've faced the hunger twice. You've survived twice. That's not luck. That's something I don't have a word for. She paused. Her lips curved. That knot smile, sharp and small. Call it hope if you want. I call it strategy. Naruto smiled. It felt strange on his face, tired but real. I'm going to need help, he said. Not just yours. I need to understand this world. The people in it. The things they carry. The hunger feeds on loneliness. If I'm going to heal it, I need to know what loneliness looks like here. Wednesday nodded. I'll help you. But you need to talk to other people. Not just me. Not just Enid. Bianca? Bianca. She said the name like it cost her something. She's the most connected person in this school. If you want to understand Nevermore, you need to understand her. Naruto looked at the academy. At the windows where students were beginning to appear, faces pressed against glass, watching the strange boy who had walked out of the woods. Will she talk to me? Wednesday's smile sharpened. She'll want to know what you are. What you can do. Why you survived when others didn't. And you're okay with that? She looked at him. Really looked. Her eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something in them that he was beginning to recognize. I'm not okay with anything, she said. But I'm learning that some things are worth the risk. She walked away. Her footsteps were light on the grass, her shoulders straight, her head high. Naruto watched her go. Felt the weight of the journal in his bag, the echo of Morticia Adams's words in his mind. The door is open. The path between worlds is broken. And I am the only one who can keep the darkness from spreading. He looked at the woods. At the darkness that waited between the trees. You're not alone, he said. To the woods. To the girl. To himself. The words hung in the air. And somewhere, in the heart of the forest, something stirred. End of chapter 4. To be continued. Next. Chapter 5. The Cracks in the Mask. Bianca Barkley found him at sunset. Naruto was sitting on the low wall at the edge of the property, watching the light drain from the sky. His legs dangled over the side close enough to the blackwood that he could feel its presence humming at the edge of his senses. Not hungry tonight. Just watching. Waiting. He'd been sitting there for an hour. Maybe 2. Time moved strangely when he was near the woods, stretching and contracting like something alive. I've been watching you. He didn't turn. He'd heard her coming, the soft crunch of shoes on gravel, the rhythm of someone who moved with confidence, who expected the world to get out of her way. You and half the school. Bianca stepped onto the wall beside him. She moved like water, smooth and deliberate. Her silver hair caught the last of the sunlight, glinting like a blade. The rest of them watched because they're scared. I watch because I'm curious. What's the difference? Fear makes people look away. Curiosity makes them look closer. She sat on the wall. Not close enough to touch. Close enough to talk. You're not like anyone I've ever met. And I've met a lot of strange people. Naruto finally looked at her. Her face was sharp, angular, beautiful in a way that seemed calculated. But her eyes were what held his attention. Pale. Almost colorless. And old. Older than they should have been. You're a psychic, he said. I'm the most powerful psychic at this school. Possibly the most powerful psychic of my generation. She said it without pride. Just fact. I can make you see things that aren't there. Feel things you don't want to feel. Believe things that aren't true. She paused. Her head tilted. But I don't think that would work on you. Why not? Because you've already seen things I can't imagine. Felt things I can't understand. Believed things that should have broken you. She looked at the woods. You walked in there twice. You came out twice. And you didn't come out empty. Naruto's hands tightened on the wall. What do you mean? You brought something back with you. The second time. Something that wasn't there before. She turned to face him fully. Her eyes were unblinking. The hunger in the woods. It changed. Not much. But enough. It's been quieter. Less desperate. You felt that? I feel everything. It's part of the gift. Or the curse. Depends on the day. She looked at the woods again. Whatever you did in there, you did something no one's done in 300 years. You made it pause. Naruto looked at his hands. At the calluses, the scars, the evidence of a life spent fighting things that shouldn't exist. I didn't fight it, he said. I just understood it. Understanding doesn't usually make monsters less hungry. Maybe this one isn't a monster. Bianca was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Less sharp. You sound like Wednesday. Is that bad? It's not bad. It's just rare. She pulled her knees up to her chest. Wrapped her arms around them. It made her look younger. Less like a queen. More like a girl. Wednesday sees the world differently than everyone else. She looks at things that should be hated and tries to understand them. She looks at things that should be feared and tries to find the truth underneath. She paused. It's why she's the only person here who doesn't scare me. Naruto looked at her. At the way she held herself, the tension in her shoulders, the careful blankness of her face. You're scared of something. I'm scared of everything. She said it simply. Like it was a fact she'd accepted a long time ago. I can feel what everyone around me is feeling. All the time. The fear. The anger. The loneliness. It's like standing in a room full of people who are all screaming, and no one else can hear them. She looked at him. Her eyes were pale, almost white in the fading light. You're the quietest person I've ever met. Naruto blinked. Me? You carry more than anyone here. More than anyone I've ever met. But you don't broadcast it. You don't let it leak out. It's all inside, locked up, controlled. She tilted her head. I don't know if that's strength or fear. Maybe it's both. She almost smiled. It was a small thing, barely there, but it changed her face. Made her look less like a weapon and more like a person. Maybe. They sat in silence for a while. The sun finished setting. The stars began to appear, faint at first, then brighter. The woods at the edge of the property were dark shapes against the sky, their edges soft, their silence deep. The girl in the woods, Bianca said finally. The first one. The one who opened the door. You know about her? Morticia Adams was my great-great-great-grandmother's closest friend. The story has been passed down in my family for 300 years. She paused. Her name was Eliza. She was 16 years old. She had no family. No friends. No one who cared if she lived or died. She looked at the woods. Her voice was quiet. She could see the spaces between worlds. The paths that connect everything to everything else. She used to sit in the library and watch the globe turn for hours. She said it showed her places she'd never been. People she'd never met. A world where she wasn't alone. Naruto's chest tightened. What happened to her? She found something in the spaces between. Something that promised her she'd never be alone again. Something that promised her a way out of the emptiness. Bianca's hands tightened on her knees. She opened the door. And whatever she found came through. It made her a part of itself. And then it started feeding. She looked at Naruto. Her eyes were bright in the darkness. You carry the same thing she carried. The connection to the spaces between. The door in your chest that leads somewhere else. That's why you survived. That's why the hunger wants you. Naruto met her eyes. Held them. I'm not going to take her place. I know. I'm going to close the door. I know that too. She looked at the woods. I've been watching you since you arrived. I've felt the way your energy moves, the way it's different from anything in this world. I've felt the way the woods respond to you, the way they've been waiting for you since before you fell through the rift. She turned to face him fully. Her face was serious. Intent. You can close the door. I believe that. But you can't do it alone. The hunger has been feeding for 300 years. It's stronger than you. Stronger than any of us. If you try to force it closed, it will break you. What do you suggest? Feed it something else. Naruto stared at her. That's what Wednesday said. Wednesday is smarter than she looks. Bianca stood. Brushed off her skirt. Looked down at him with those pale, ancient eyes. The hunger feeds on loneliness. On fear. On the things people carry when they have no one to share the weight. If you can show it something else, something it's never tasted before, it might loosen its grip on the door. What haven't they tasted? She smiled. It was a sad smile, small and fragile. Connection. Real connection. The kind that isn't about taking or feeding or surviving. The kind that Eliza was looking for when she opened the door in the first place. She started to walk away. Then stopped. Looked back. Wednesday trusts you. That's more than she's given anyone. Don't break it. She walked into the darkness. Her footsteps were soft on the grass, her silver hair fading into the shadows until she was just another ghost in a place full of ghosts. Naruto sat on the wall for a long time, staring at the woods, thinking about Eliza. About a 16-year-old girl who was so alone that she opened a door to something she didn't understand, just because it promised her she wouldn't be alone anymore. He understood that. Better than he wanted to. He found Wednesday in the library. She was sitting in front of the globe, her hands pressed against its surface, her eyes closed. The globe was turning slowly, its surface shifting, images flickering across its metal face. She didn't open her eyes when he approached. Bianca talked to you. How did you know? I could feel her energy shifting. She only gets that intense when she's trying to figure someone out. Wednesday opened her eyes. The globe's light reflected in them, making them look almost golden. What did she tell you? About Eliza. About the door. About what I need to do. Wednesday pulled her hands away from the globe. It kept turning, slower now, its images fading into darkness. And she said the same thing you did? I need to show the hunger something it's never tasted. The hunger has tasted fear. It's tasted loneliness. It's tasted despair. It's tasted everything that comes from being alone in a world that doesn't want you. Wednesday stood. Her face was serious. What it's never tasted is connection. Real connection. The kind that comes from someone choosing to stay. She walked toward the stacks. Naruto followed. Why are you helping me? He asked. She stopped. Didn't turn. You helped someone who was trying to hurt you. You faced something that should have destroyed you. You didn't run. You didn't fight. You just understood. She turned. Her face was blank, but her hands were not. They were pressed against her sides, fingers spread, like she was trying to hold herself together. You see people. Not what they pretend to be. Not what they want you to see. You see them. She paused. No one has ever seen me. Not really. Not until you. Naruto stood in the silence. Felt the weight of her words. Felt the crack in her armor, the thing she never let anyone see. I see you, he said quietly. The girl who spent 3 years documenting disappearances because no one else would. The girl who carries more than she lets anyone know. The girl who's scared of being alone but doesn't know how to let anyone in. Wednesday's jaw tightened. Her hands curled into fists. You don't know me. I know you're standing in a library at midnight, trying to find a way to save someone who's been lost for 300 years. I know you gave me your journal when you didn't know if you could trust me. I know you sat in a greenhouse and talked to plants because they're the only things that don't expect you to be something you're not. He stepped closer. Not close enough to touch. Close enough to be seen. I know you're scared. Of trusting people. Of letting them in. Of being let down again. And I know you're helping me anyway. Wednesday stared at him. Her face was still blank, but her eyes were not. They were bright. Bright in a way that had nothing to do with the globe's light. You're infuriating, she said. Her voice was rough. Thinner than usual. I know. You see things you shouldn't see. You say things you shouldn't say. You make people feel things they don't want to feel. I know. She took a breath. Held it. Let it out slowly. The way he taught her, maybe, or the way she'd taught herself. He couldn't tell. When you close the door, she said, you'll have to go back into the woods. Deeper than before. To the heart. To the place where Eliza is waiting. She paused. I'm coming with you. Naruto shook his head. It's too dangerous. You said you wouldn't do this alone. I said I wouldn't fight it alone. I didn't say I'd let you walk into something that could kill you. Wednesday's lips curved. That knot smile, sharp and small. You can't stop me. I can tie you to a chair. You'd have to catch me first. They stood there, facing each other. The globe turned slowly in the center of the room, casting shadows that moved like living things. Naruto smiled. Tired. Real. The kind of smile that came from somewhere deeper than happiness. Fine, he said. But you do what I say. When I say it. No arguments. I always argue. I know. He looked at the globe. At the map of worlds, the paths between, the point of light that was home. But this time, you're going to listen. Because if something happens to you. He stopped. The words caught in his throat. Wednesday waited. She didn't push. She didn't fill the silence. She just stood there, present, patient, letting him find the words. If something happens to you, he said finally, I don't know what I'd do. The words hung in the air. Too honest. Too raw. The kind of thing he never said, not to anyone, not even to himself. Wednesday looked at him. Her face was still blank, but something had shifted. Something in her posture, in the way she held herself. Less like a blade. More like something that was learning to be soft. You won't lose me, she said. I'm harder to kill than I look. That's not. I know. She stepped closer. Her hand reached out. Touched his arm. Her fingers were cold, precise, but they didn't pull away. I know what you meant. She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were dark, unreadable. But there was something in them that he hadn't seen before. Something that looked almost like warmth. Then she pulled away. Turned back to the shelves. We need to prepare. The woods are quieter since you went in, but they're not safe. The hunger is waiting. Watching. It knows you're coming back. She pulled a book from the shelf. Handed it to him. This is everything we know about the heart of the woods. The geography. The energy patterns. The history. Read it. Learn it. We go in 3 days. Naruto took the book. It was heavy. Old. The cover was worn smooth, the pages yellow with age. What happens in 3 days? The new moon. The hunger is weakest when there's no light. If we're going to face it, we face it then. She walked toward the door of the library. Paused at the threshold. Get some sleep, she said. You look terrible. You don't look much better. She almost smiled. Almost. The corner of her mouth twitched, just for a moment, and then it was gone. I always look like this. She left. The door closed behind her. And Naruto stood alone in the library, holding a book that was 300 years old, and felt something shift in his chest. Not loneliness. Not emptiness. Something else. Something that felt almost like hope. He didn't sleep. He sat in his room, reading the book Wednesday had given him. The history of the heart of the woods. The geography of a place that didn't exist on any map. The patterns of energy that pulsed through the forest like a heartbeat. The heart was at the center of the blackwood. A clearing that had been there since before the academy was built, before the town was founded, before anyone could remember. The trees around it were older than anything else in the forest, their roots tangled together, their branches reaching toward the sky like hands grasping for something they'd never reach. In the center of the clearing was a stone. The same stone he'd landed next to on his first night in this world. The same stone he touched when he first felt the hunger watching him. The stone was the door. The place where Eliza had opened the rift. The place where the hunger had come through. And the place where he would close it. He read until his eyes burned. Until the words blurred on the page. Until he knew the geography of the heart better than he knew the streets of Konoha. Then he closed the book. Lay back on his bed. Stared at the ceiling. 3 days. 3 days until he went back into the woods. 3 days until he faced the hunger again. 3 days until he found out if he was strong enough to close a door that had been open for 300 years. He closed his eyes. Reached for his chakra. It was there, thin and weak, moving through his coils like water through a shallow stream. Not enough for the techniques he'd spent his life perfecting. Not enough for the power he'd once commanded. But enough. Enough to try. He let his chakra settle. Let his breathing slow. Let himself drift toward sleep. And somewhere, in the space between waking and dreaming, he felt it. A presence. Not the hunger. Not the woods. Something else. Something that had been with him since he fell through the rift, waiting, watching, waiting for him to be ready. You're not alone. The voice was familiar. Not Kurama's. Not Jiraiya's. Something older. Something that had been part of him for longer than he could remember. You've never been alone. He tried to answer. Tried to speak. But sleep was pulling him down, into darkness, into silence, into a place where words didn't matter. The last thing he felt, before sleep took him completely, was warmth. Not the warmth of chakra. Not the warmth of Kurama's presence. The warmth of something that had been waiting for him to come home. He woke to knocking. 3 sharp raps. Precise. Deliberate. He sat up. The book was on the floor where he dropped it. The room was dark, the windows showing nothing but blackness. He crossed the room. Opened the door. Wednesday stood in the hallway. She was dressed in black, as always, but there was something different about her tonight. Something in the way she held herself. Less rigid. Less controlled. You weren't at breakfast, she said. What time is it? Past noon. Naruto blinked. He'd slept longer than he meant to. Longer than he'd slept since arriving in this world. You look better, Wednesday said. Less like you're about to collapse. I feel better. He leaned against the doorframe. What happened? Nothing happened. I came to check on you. You didn't answer your door this morning. Enid was worried. Naruto smiled. Enid is always worried. She's a worrier. It's exhausting. Wednesday paused. Something flickered in her expression. Something that might have been hesitation. I was worried too. The words hung in the air. Wednesday Adams, admitting she was worried about someone. Naruto's smile softened. Became something real. I'm okay, he said. I just needed to sleep. Wednesday nodded. Her face was blank again, but her hands were different. They were clasped behind her back, fingers intertwined, holding on to something. Come on, she said. Enid made food. She'll be offended if you don't eat it. She turned. Started walking down the hallway. Naruto watched her go. Watched the way her shoulders were less tight, her steps less sharp. Watched the way she glanced back at him, just once, to make sure he was following. He smiled. Small. Real. And followed. Enid had made soup. It was in a pot on the table in Wednesday's room, a room that was surprisingly bare, surprisingly empty, with nothing on the walls and nothing on the shelves except books and a typewriter and a small glass case that held something that might have been a scorpion. It's butternut squash, Enid said, her voice bright, her hair pink with yellow streaks. I know you probably don't know what that is, but it's good, I promise. My mom used to make it when I was sick. It's not that you're sick, obviously, you just look like you could use something warm. Naruto sat at the table. Let Enid ladle soup into a bowl. Let her push it toward him with a spoon that had a cat on the handle. It's Wednesday's spoon, Enid said. She doesn't use it. I don't know why she has it. I have it because my grandmother gave it to me. She believed that everyone should own at least one thing that brings them joy. And it brings you joy? Wednesday looked at the spoon. At the cat on the handle, its face slightly lopsided, its eyes too big. No, she said. But it brings my grandmother joy to know I have it. Enid made a sound that was half laugh, half sigh. Her hair shifted to something softer, pink and blue and purple all at once. That's so you? Naruto ate the soup. It was good. Warm. Thick. It tasted like something someone had made because they cared. He hadn't had soup like that in a long time. Thank you, he said. Enid beamed. Her hair went bright pink, almost glowing. See? I told you he'd like it. Wednesday sat across from him. She wasn't eating. She was watching him with those dark, unreadable eyes. You read the book, she said. All of it. And the heart is at the center of the woods. The stone is the door. The hunger is strongest there, but it's also most vulnerable. If I can reach the stone, I can close the door. He paused. Set down the spoon. But I can't do it alone. The hunger will fight me. It's been feeding for 300 years. It won't let go without a fight. Wednesday nodded. I've been thinking about that. The hunger feeds on loneliness. On fear. On the things people carry when they're alone. She leaned forward. Her hands were flat on the table, fingers spread. What if you're not alone when you face it? Naruto looked at her. At the stillness of her face, the intensity of her eyes. You're saying I should bring someone with me. I'm saying the hunger has never faced someone who wasn't alone. Everyone who went into the woods went in scared. Alone. Desperate. They were easy prey. She paused. You're not desperate. You're not scared. And you're not alone. Enid's hair flickered. Wait. You're going back into the woods? To the heart? The place where everyone who's ever gone in has died. I'm going to close the door. You're going to die. I'm not going to die. Naruto's voice was calm. Certain. I've faced worse things than a hungry forest. I've faced demons and gods and things that should have killed me 100 times. I'm still here. He looked at Enid. At the fear in her face, the brightness of her hair dimming to something pale. I'm not going to die, he said again, softer this time. I promise. Enid stared at him. Her hair shifted through a dozen colors, settling finally on something close to gold. You can't promise that, she said. No one can promise that. I can. He smiled. Not the big smile. Not the fake smile. Something smaller. Something that was almost honest. Because I have something to come back to. He looked at Wednesday. She was watching him, her face blank, but her hands were still on the table, fingers spread, holding on. Enid saw it. Her hair brightened, just a little. You're both insane, she said. Completely insane. Walking into a forest that kills people. Trying to close a door that's been open for 300 years. Thinking you can save someone who's been gone for centuries. She shook her head. But she was smiling. A small, worried smile. If you're going to do this, she said, I want to help. I don't know what I can do. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a ninja from another world. But I can be there. When you come back. I can make sure you have something to come back to. Naruto looked at her. At the brightness of her hair, the openness of her face, the way she wore her heart on the outside where anyone could see it. That's more than enough, he said. Enid's smile widened. Her hair went pink, bright and warm. Okay, she said. Okay. Then let's figure out how to save a monster. They spent the rest of the day planning. Wednesday had maps. Enid had information about the woods, things she'd heard from other students, rumors about the disappearances, stories that had been passed down for generations. Naruto had his instincts, his training, his understanding of the hunger. They put it all together on Wednesday's floor. A patchwork of knowledge that spanned centuries. The heart is here, Wednesday said, pointing to a spot on the map. The stone is the door. But the stone isn't just a stone. It's a focus. A place where the energy between worlds is thin. She looked at Naruto. When you touch it, you'll be able to feel the door. The space between worlds. The path home. Naruto looked at the map. At the spot that represented the heart. At the path that led through the woods, past the clearing where he'd first landed, past the place where he'd faced the hunger. When I touch it, he said, the hunger will know. It'll come for me. It'll try to feed. Can you fight it? I can try. He paused. But fighting isn't the answer. Bianca said the hunger needs to taste something else. Something it's never tasted before. What's something it's never tasted before? Naruto looked at Enid. At the brightness of her hair, the openness of her face. At Wednesday. At the stillness of her hands, the intensity of her eyes. Connection, he said. Real connection. The kind Eliza was looking for when she opened the door. Wednesday was quiet for a moment. Her hands were flat on the map, fingers spread. You're going to offer it yourself. I'm going to offer it something it's never had. A choice. It can keep feeding on fear and loneliness, or it can let go. It can let Eliza go. It can let the door close. And if it chooses to keep feeding? Then I fight. With everything I have. Wednesday stared at him. Her face was blank, but her eyes were not. They were bright. Bright in a way that had nothing to do with the light. You could die. I've died before. It didn't stick. Enid made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Her hair flickered through a dozen colors, settling on something that was almost white. You're both insane, she said again. Completely insane. But she was smiling. A small, shaky smile. When do we go? Naruto looked at Wednesday. She nodded. Tomorrow, he said. At sunset. The hunger is weakest when the light is fading. We go in. We reach the heart. We close the door. He looked at Enid. And we come back. Enid nodded. Her hair was gold now, bright and warm, the color of sunlight. Okay, she said. Okay. Then let's do this. That night, Naruto sat on the wall again. The woods were dark in front of him. The academy was dark behind him. The sky above was full of stars, more stars than he'd ever seen in Konoha, more stars than he thought existed. He heard her coming. Her footsteps were light on the grass, deliberate, the footsteps of someone who moved through the world without asking permission. She sat beside him. Not close enough to touch. Close enough to talk. You're thinking about home, Wednesday said. I'm thinking about a lot of things. Tell me. He looked at her. Her face was pale in the starlight, her eyes dark, her expression blank. But her hands were not. They were pressed against the stone of the wall, fingers spread, holding on. I'm thinking about the people I left behind. My friends. My teachers. The people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He paused. I'm thinking about whether they're looking for me. Whether they know I'm gone. Whether they think I'm dead. Wednesday was quiet for a moment. Would they look for you? Yeah. They'd look. They'd never stop looking. He smiled. Small. Sad. That's what family does. Wednesday looked at the stars. At the darkness beyond them. I don't know what that's like, she said. My family is complicated. They love me, I think. In their way. But they don't understand me. They never have. She paused. You're the first person who's ever looked at me and seen something other than a problem to be solved. Naruto looked at her. At the stillness of her face, the tension in her shoulders, the way she was holding herself like she was waiting for something to break. I see you, he said. The girl who spent 3 years documenting disappearances because no one else would. The girl who carries more than she lets anyone know. The girl who's scared of being alone but doesn't know how to let anyone in. He paused. I see you, Wednesday. And I'm not going anywhere. Wednesday stared at him. Her face was blank, but her eyes were not. They were bright. Bright in a way that had nothing to do with the stars. You're leaving tomorrow. You're going into the woods. You're going to close the door. And then I'm coming back. You don't know that. I do. He smiled. Not the big smile. Not the fake smile. Something smaller. Something that was almost honest. Because I have something to come back to. Wednesday was quiet for a long time. The stars moved overhead. The woods waited in the darkness. And somewhere, in the heart of the forest, something stirred. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. If you don't come back, she said, I'll go in after you. Naruto looked at her. At the darkness of her eyes, the stillness of her face, the way she was holding herself like a blade waiting to be drawn. I know, he said. He reached out. His hand found hers on the stone. Her fingers were cold, precise, but they didn't pull away. They sat like that for a long time, watching the stars, watching the woods, watching the darkness that waited for them both. And for the first time in a long time, Naruto didn't feel alone. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6, Into the Dark. The forest was different at twilight. Naruto noticed it the moment they crossed the stone wall. The silence was there, as always, but it was thinner now. Less absolute. He could hear the wind moving through the branches above, the soft crunch of leaves beneath their feet, the steady rhythm of Wednesday's breathing beside him. The hunger was waiting. He could feel it at the edge of his senses, a presence that was both familiar and strange. It had changed since the last time he was here. Quieter. Less desperate. Like something that was learning to be patient. "Stay close," he said. Wednesday didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her steps were measured, deliberate, her eyes scanning the shadows between the trees. She was carrying a bag over her shoulder, supplies, she'd said. Things they might need. Things he hadn't asked about because he knew she wouldn't tell him unless it was important. The path to the heart was marked on Wednesday's map, but the forest didn't seem to care about maps. The trees shifted as they walked, their branches rearranging themselves, their roots rising and falling like waves. The path they planned was gone. The path they followed was something else. Something the forest was choosing for them. "It's guiding us," Wednesday said. "I know. Is that good or bad?" Naruto looked at the trees. At the way they moved, the way they opened and closed around them like a door that was waiting to be opened. "It wants us to reach the heart. It wants me to touch the stone. And then? And then it feeds." Wednesday's hand found his. Her fingers were cold, precise, but they didn't shake. "Then we don't let it." They walked deeper into the forest. The light faded behind them, the last traces of sunset swallowed by the canopy above. The trees grew closer together, their branches tangling, their roots twisting beneath their feet. The air grew thick, heavy, like breathing underwater. And then, without warning, the trees opened. They were in a clearing. Not the clearing where he'd first landed. Not the clearing where he'd faced the hunger. Something else. Something that had been waiting for them. In the center of the clearing stood a figure. She was young. Younger than him. Her hair was dark, her skin pale, her eyes black in a way that had nothing to do with color. She wore a dress that might have been white once, stained now with dirt, and something that might have been blood. She smiled when she saw him. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You came back." Naruto stepped forward. Wednesday's hand tightened on his for a moment, then released. "I said I would." The girl tilted her head. Her eyes moved to Wednesday, lingered there for a moment, then returned to him. "You brought someone new. Someone who cares about you. She's not food." "Everything is food, eventually." She stepped closer. Her feet made no sound on the grass. "The hunger doesn't care about names. About faces. About the things that make you who you are. It only cares about what you carry." She stopped a few feet away. Her eyes were black, depthless, but there was something in them that he hadn't seen before. Something that looked almost like recognition. "You carry more than anyone I've ever met. More than I carried when I was alive. More than the woman who tried to save me. More than anyone who's walked into these woods in 300 years. She paused. "Why?" Naruto looked at her. At the girl who had been alone. At the hunger that had consumed her. At the door that had been waiting for 300 years to be closed. "Because I had something to come back to," he said. "People who believed in me. People who saw me. People who made me believe I was worth something." He stepped closer. Close enough to touch. "You didn't have that. You were alone. And when something promised you that you wouldn't be alone anymore, you opened the door." Her face cracked. The mask she wore, the hunger she carried, the thing that had been her for 300 years, it cracked. "I was so alone," she said. Her voice was different now. Younger. Smaller. The voice of a girl who had been 16 years old, and had no one. "I thought if I could just find something, anything, that would make it stop. The emptiness. The silence. The feeling of being nothing." She looked at her hands. At the stains, the dirt, the evidence of 300 years of hunger. "I didn't know what would come through. I didn't know what it would do to me. I just wanted to not be alone." Naruto reached out. His hand found hers. Her skin was cold, wrong, but she didn't pull away. "You're not alone now," he said. She looked at him. Her eyes were black, depthless, but there was something in them that looked almost like tears. You don't understand. I can't stop. The hunger, it's part of me now. I've been feeding for 300 years. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. He pulled her closer. Let her see his face, his eyes, the marks on his cheeks that marked him as different, as other, as something that had never quite belonged. I was alone too. For a long time. I had a demon inside me that everyone hated. I had no family. No friends. No one who cared if I lived or died. He paused. And then I found people who saw me. Who believed in me. Who made me believe I was worth something. He squeezed her hand. You can find that too. But not like this. Not by feeding. Not by taking. You have to let go. You have to stop being something that hurts other people and start being something else. Her face crumpled. The mask broke. And underneath, she was just a girl. A girl who had been scared and alone and hungry for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be anything else. I don't know how, she whispered. Then let me show you. He closed his eyes. Reached for his chakra. It was there, thin and weak, but it was enough. He pushed. Not with force. Not with power. With something else. Something that was more him than any technique, or weapon, or ability. He pushed with connection. The chakra flowed from him into her. Not as energy. Not as power. As something else. Something that felt like warmth, like light, like the first time Irika had smiled at him, the first time Sakura had laughed at his jokes, the first time Sasuke had called him friend. The hunger screamed. It was inside her, wrapped around her, part of her. It had been feeding for 300 years, growing stronger, growing desperate. It didn't want to let go. It didn't know how to let go. But Eliza did. She reached for him. Her fingers found his, cold and trembling, and she held on. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I've been alone for so long. I know. I don't want to be alone anymore. He pulled her closer. Let her feel his warmth, his presence, the thing that had kept him alive through years of loneliness and fear and pain. You're not alone, he said. You've never been alone. The hunger screamed again. But it was weaker now. Fading. The connection between them was stronger than the hunger. Stronger than 300 years of feeding. Stronger than fear. Eliza's face was changing. The blackness in her eyes was fading, replaced by something that looked almost human. Her skin was warming. Her hands were steadying. I can feel it, she said. The door. It's closing. Let it. But. Let it, Eliza. It's time to let go. She looked at him. Her eyes were brown now, ordinary, the eyes of a girl who had been lost for 300 years. What happens to me? Naruto didn't know. He wanted to promise her something, peace, rest, something that wasn't hunger and fear and darkness. But he couldn't. He didn't know. I don't know, he said. But whatever happens, you're not going to be alone. She smiled. It was a small smile, fragile, but it was real. Thank you, she said, for seeing me. She let go. The hunger screamed one last time, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, that shook the trees and split the sky. And then it was gone. The darkness faded. The silence broke. And the door closed. Naruto stood in the clearing. Eliza was gone. The hunger was gone. The woods were just woods, full of trees and shadows and the ordinary silence of a world that had no need for demons. Wednesday was beside him. Her hand was on his arm, steadying him, holding him up. You did it, she said. He looked at his hands. At the hands that had held the power of a god. At the hands that had closed the door that had been open for 300 years. We did it, he said. Wednesday's lips curved. That not smile, sharp and small. I just stood here. You were here. That's what mattered. She looked at him for a long moment. Her face was blank, but her eyes were not. They were bright. Bright in a way that had nothing to do with the light. Come on, she said. Let's go home. They walked out of the woods as the sun was rising. The light filtered through the trees, golden and warm, touching everything it reached. The forest was waking up. Birds were singing. Animals were moving in the undergrowth. The silence that had hung over the blackwood for 300 years was gone. Enid was waiting at the wall. Her hair was pink, bright and warm, and she was crying. You're okay, she said. You're both okay. She threw her arms around Naruto, then Wednesday, then Naruto again. Her hair smelled like flowers, and she was warm, and she was crying, and she was so happy. We're okay, Naruto said. We're okay. Enid pulled back. Looked at him. At Wednesday. The woods feel different, she said. Lighter. Like something's been lifted. Naruto looked back at the forest. At the light filtering through the trees, the birds singing, the ordinary sounds of a world that was healing. I closed the door, he said. It's over. Enid's smile was bright enough to light up the whole academy. Come on, she said. Weems is going to want to know what happened. And Bianca's been waiting. And Ajax made breakfast, which is terrible, but he tried and… She kept talking. Her voice was a constant stream of words, bright and warm and alive. Naruto followed her. Wednesday walked beside him. Their hands were close, almost touching, not quite. They walked toward the academy. Toward the stone walls and the arched windows and the students who were beginning to appear in the courtyard. Toward the place that wasn't home but was becoming something like it. Naruto smiled. Small. Real. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like running. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7, The Space Between. The days after the door closed were strange. The Blackwood had changed. Students noticed it first, the way the forest seemed lighter, the way the silence had been replaced by ordinary sounds, the way the shadows didn't seem to move on their own anymore. Principal Weems called an assembly, announced that the anomaly in the woods had been resolved, and didn't mention Naruto's name once. He didn't mind. He was used to not being mentioned. What he wasn't used to was the quiet in his chest. The hunger was gone. He'd felt it leave, felt the door close, felt the connection between world seals shut. But something else had gone with it. Something he hadn't realized he was carrying. The connection to the spaces between. It had been there since he fell through the rift. A thread that linked him to the world he'd left behind. A path that led home. Now it was gone. He sat on the wall at sunset, watching the woods. They were different now. Ordinary. Just trees and shadows and the fading light. There was nothing waiting in them anymore. Nothing watching. Nothing hungry. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt empty. You've been sitting there for 3 hours. He didn't turn. He'd heard Wednesday coming, her footsteps on the grass, deliberate as always. I was thinking. About what? He looked at the woods. At the place where the door had been. The door is closed. The path is gone. I can't go home. Wednesday sat beside him. Not close enough to touch. Close enough to talk. You don't know that. I felt it close. The connection between worlds. It sealed shut when the hunger left. He looked at his hands. At the hands that had held a god's power. At the hands that were just hands now. I'm stuck here. Wednesday was quiet for a moment. Her hands were flat on the stone, fingers spread. Is that so bad? He looked at her. At the darkness of her eyes, the stillness of her face, the way she held herself like something that was learning to be soft. No, he said. It's not bad. It's just… He paused. Tried to find the words. It's just that I spent my whole life trying to find somewhere I belong. And when I finally found it, when I finally had people who saw me, who believed in me, who made me feel like I was worth something, I lost it. He looked at the sky. At the stars that were beginning to appear. I'm tired of losing things. Wednesday looked at him for a long time. Her face was blank, but her eyes were not. They were dark, unreadable, but there was something in them that he was beginning to recognize. You haven't lost anything, she said. You're still here. You're still you. And the people who believed in you, they're still there. Even if you can't see them. Even if you can't go back. She paused. Believing in someone isn't about being in the same world. It's about carrying them with you. Everywhere you go. Naruto looked at her. At the girl who had spent 3 years documenting disappearances that no one else believed in. At the girl who carried more than she let anyone know. At the girl who was sitting beside him, not touching, but present. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. Most people are too stupid to notice. He smiled. Small. Real. I noticed. She almost smiled. Almost. The corner of her mouth twitched, just for a moment, and then it was gone. Come on, she said. Enid made dinner. She'll be offended if you don't eat it. She stood, held out her hand. Naruto looked at it, at her fingers pale and precise, waiting for him to take them. He did. Her hand was cold, but it didn't pull away. The weeks that followed were strange in a different way. Naruto found himself settling into a routine. Breakfast with Enid, who talked constantly, and whose hair changed color with her mood. Classes he didn't understand, subjects he'd never studied, teachers who looked at him like a puzzle they were trying to solve. Training in the field behind the stables, his chakra slowly growing, slowly strengthening, slowly becoming something he could rely on again. And Wednesday. She was there. Not always. Not in the way Enid was, bright and warm and present. But she was there. In the library, reading beside him. In the greenhouse, talking to plants that moved when he got too close. On the wall at sunset, sitting beside him in silence. She didn't talk much. She didn't need to. They understood each other. The way two people who had been alone for a long time understood each other. The way people who had learned to carry their pain in silence understood each other. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't friendship. Not exactly. It was something else. Something he didn't have a word for. One night, he found her in the greenhouse. It was late. The moon was full, casting silver light through the fogged windows. Wednesday was sitting on the floor, her hands in the soil, her face blank. She was talking to a plant. A small thing, barely a seedling, its leaves trembling in the darkness. You're growing, she was saying. Slowly. But you're growing. That's more than most things do in this place. Naruto stood in the doorway. Watched. You don't need to hide, she said without looking up. I know you're there. He sat down across from her. The soil was cool beneath him, damp with moisture. What are you doing? Talking to the nightshade. It's been struggling since the door closed. The energy in the woods changed. Some plants are having trouble adapting. She looked at the seedling. Her fingers brushed its leaves, gentle in a way he'd never seen her be gentle. It's not your fault, she said. To the plant? Or maybe to him. He couldn't tell. Naruto watched her for a moment. The moonlight on her face, the looseness of her hair, the way her hands moved in the soil. You're different here, he said. She looked up. Her face was blank, but her eyes were not. They were dark, unreadable, but there was something in them that looked almost like vulnerability. Different how? You're softer. Gentler. You talk to plants like they're people. Plants are easier than people. They don't expect anything from you. They don't want anything from you. They just grow. She paused. I understand things that just grow. Naruto looked at the seedling. At its trembling leaves, its fragile stem, its determination to live in a place that wasn't made for it. I understand that too, he said. Wednesday looked at him. Her hands were still in the soil, fingers spread, holding on. Why do you smile? She asked. The question came out of nowhere. Or maybe it had been waiting, all this time, to be asked. Naruto thought about it. About the years of smiling when he wanted to cry. About the years of laughing when he wanted to scream. About the years of pretending he was okay when he was falling apart. So people don't ask what's wrong, he said. Wednesday didn't respond. But she didn't look away either. She looked at him with those dark, unreadable eyes, and she saw him. Really saw him. You don't have to do that here, she said. Naruto's chest tightened. Something in his throat closed up. Something he'd been holding for a long time. I don't know how to stop, he said. She reached out. Her hand found his in the soil. Her fingers were cold, precise, but they didn't pull away. Then learn. He looked at their hands. At her fingers intertwined with his. At the soil beneath them, dark and cool, grounding them both. I'm scared, he said. The words came out rough. Raw. The kind of thing he never said, not to anyone, not even to himself. I know. I'm scared that if I let go, if I stop pretending, there won't be anything left. Just the emptiness. Just the loneliness. Just the thing that's been inside me since I was old enough to know what it meant to be alone. Wednesday squeezed his hand. Her grip was firm, steady, holding him in place. That's not true, she said. You're not empty. You've never been empty. You're the fullest person I've ever met. She looked at him. Her face was blank, but her voice was not. It was softer than he'd ever heard it. You carry so much pain, loneliness, fear. But you carry other things too. Hope, kindness, the ability to see people when everyone else looks away. She paused. That's not emptiness. That's the opposite of emptiness. Naruto stared at her. At the girl who had spent 3 years documenting disappearances because no one else would. At the girl who had sat beside him in silence, night after night, asking for nothing. At the girl who was holding his hand in the soil, telling him he wasn't empty. He felt something crack in his chest. Something he'd been holding for so long he'd forgotten it was there. And for the first time in a very long time, he let it go. He didn't cry. He didn't break. He just sat there, in the greenhouse, with Wednesday's hand in his, and let himself be seen. She didn't say anything. She didn't try to comfort him. She just sat there, present, patient, letting him be. When the sun began to rise, they were still sitting there, hands in the soil. Moonlight faded to gold. The seedling between them had stopped trembling. They walked back to the academy as the morning light filled the courtyard. Enid was waiting at the entrance. Her hair was pink, bright and warm, and she was smiling. You two are up early, she said. Then she saw their faces. Her smile faded. Are you okay? Naruto looked at Wednesday. She looked at him. We're okay, he said. Enid looked at them for a moment. Her eyes moved from his face to Wednesday's, lingering on their hands, which were still almost touching. Okay, she said slowly. Well, breakfast is ready. Ajax made pancakes. They're pancakes. She led them inside. Her voice filled the hallway, bright and warm, chasing away the last shadows of the night. Naruto walked beside Wednesday. Their hands brushed. Once. Twice. And then, without looking at each other, their fingers intertwined. No one said anything. No one needed to. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8, The Weight of Staying. The morning of the new moon, Naruto woke before dawn. He lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling, feeling the faint pulse of his chakra moving through his coils. It was stronger now. Not as strong as it had been in his own world, but stronger than it had been when he arrived. The training was working. The rest was working. The quiet was working. He was healing. He didn't know what that meant. Healing was supposed to feel like something, a wound closing, a bone mending, something that could be measured and tracked and understood. But this healing was different. It felt like learning to breathe again after holding his breath for so long he'd forgotten what air tasted like. He got up, dressed, walked through the empty hallways of Nevermore, past the portraits that watched him with eyes that seemed to know more than they should, past the windows that looked out on a courtyard still wet with dew. He found himself at the library. The door was unlocked. It was always unlocked now, ever since he told Weems about the globe, about the map, about the way it had shown him a path home. She hadn't said much when he told her. Just nodded. Looked at him with those sharp, assessing eyes. The globe has been dormant for 300 years, she'd said. Since the door opened. It was waiting for someone who could see what it saw. She'd paused. You're not the first person to fall into this world, Naruto. But you're the first one who chose to stay. He hadn't known how to answer that. So he hadn't. Now he stood in front of the globe, watching it turn. The images on its surface were different now. The paths between worlds were closed. The door was sealed. But there was still something there, a faint light, a thread of something that might have been connection. Home. He reached out, touched the globe, felt the warmth of it, the pulse of something that was almost chakra. You're not alone. The voice was familiar. Not Kurama's. Not Jiraiya's. Something older. Something that had been part of him for longer than he could remember. You've never been alone. He closed his eyes. Let the warmth spread through his chest, through his coils, through the places that had been empty for so long. He thought about Konoha. About the faces of the people he'd left behind. Irika's smile. Sakura's laugh. Sasuke's rare, reluctant grin. Kakashi's eyes crinkled above the mask. The people who had believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. He carried them with him. Everywhere he went. Even here. In a world without chakra. Without demons. Without wars. He opened his eyes. The globe was still turning. The light was still there. But he didn't reach for it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He found Wednesday on the wall. She was sitting where he usually sat, her legs dangling over the side, her hands flat on the stone. The woods in front of her were ordinary, just trees and shadows and the soft light of dawn. She didn't turn when he sat beside her. "You're not going home," she said. It wasn't a question. "I don't know if I can. The door is closed. The path is sealed." He paused. "I don't know if I want to open it." She looked at him. Her face was blank, but her eyes were not. They were dark, unreadable, but there was something in them that he was beginning to recognize as hope. Why? He thought about it. About the answer she wanted. About the answer that was true. "Because I spent my whole life looking for somewhere I belong," he said. "And I think I found it." Wednesday stared at him. Her hands were flat on the stone, fingers spread, holding on. "You belong here?" "I belong with people who see me. Who don't try to change me. Who let me be what I am." He looked at her. "I found that here." She was quiet for a long time. The sun rose higher. The light touched her face, softening the sharp lines, making her look almost gentle. "You're staying," she said. He smiled. Small. Real. "For now." She nodded once. Short. Decisive. "Acceptable." They sat on the wall as the morning light filled the valley. Below them, Nevermore was waking up. Lights were coming on in the windows. Students were appearing in the courtyard, their voices carrying on the wind. Enid was there, her hair bright pink, waving at something or someone, her laugh echoing off the stone walls. The woods were quiet. Not the wrong silence of the hunger. The ordinary silence of a forest that was healing. Birds were singing. Animals were moving in the undergrowth. The shadows were just shadows. "You're different," Wednesday said. Naruto looked at her. "Different how?" "You smile less." He touched his face. He hadn't noticed. But she was right. The smile he wore, the one he'd been wearing for as long as he could remember, was gone. "Is that bad?" "No." She looked at the woods. At the light filtering through the trees. "You smile when you're happy. You smile when you're sad. You smile when you want people to stop asking questions." She paused. "You're not doing that anymore." Naruto looked at his hands. At the calluses, the scars, the evidence of a life spent fighting things that shouldn't exist. "I don't need to anymore," he said. "Not here." Wednesday was quiet. Her hand was on the stone between them, close enough to touch. Naruto reached out. His fingers brushed hers. She didn't pull away. They sat like that for a long time. Watching the sun rise. Watching the world wake up. Watching the place that wasn't home become something like it. And when the bell rang for breakfast, when Enid's voice floated up from the courtyard, calling their names, they stood together and walked toward the sound. Later that day, Naruto found himself in the greenhouse. He didn't go there often. It was Wednesday's space, her place, the one corner of Nevermore that she'd claimed for herself. But today, something drew him there. The nightshade was blooming. It was the seedling she'd been tending, the one that had been struggling since the door closed. Its leaves were green now, full and healthy. Its flowers were small, dark purple, almost black in the dim light. He knelt beside it. Touched its leaves. They were warm, almost hot, pulsing with something that might have been chakra or might have been something else. "You're growing," he said. Slowly. "But you're growing." He smiled. Small. Real. "That's more than most things do." He found Wednesday in the library. She was sitting in front of the globe, her hands pressed against its surface, her eyes closed. The globe was still, its images faded, its light dim. "The door is closed," she said without opening her eyes. "The paths are sealed. The globe can't show you a way home." Naruto sat beside her. Looked at the globe. At the faint light that still pulsed at its center, the thread of something that might have been connection. "I know. It can't show you anything anymore. It's just a globe." "I know." She opened her eyes. Looked at him. Her face was blank, but her hands were not. They were pressed against the globe, fingers spread, holding on. "You're not going to try to open the door?" It wasn't a question. "No. Not yet. Maybe not ever." "Why?" He looked at her. At the darkness of her eyes, the stillness of her face, the way she held herself like something that was learning to be soft. "Because I'm tired of running," he said. "I've been running my whole life. Running towards something. Running away from something. Running because I didn't know how to stop. He paused. I want to stop. Wednesday stared at him. Her hands were still on the globe, but they had relaxed. The tension in her shoulders had eased. Something in her face had softened. You're staying. He smiled. Small. Real. I'm staying. She nodded once. Her lips curved. Not the sharp, small knot smile. Something softer. Something that was almost real.